Welcome to Wife Cheating Story. I hope you have an enjoyable and relaxing time listening. Let's get started.
Shadows collided with neon lights the night she slipped into his arms. No warning, just the sudden snap of everything I held sacred unraveling. People whispered my name across that crowded banquet hall, but I could only see Krista, dancing with a man who wore arrogance like a crown. Hushed applause turned into the slow drumbeat of my breaking heart. Somehow I forced a smile, pretending not to notice her hand curling into his. Anger tasted bitter on my tongue, rage throbbing beneath my polished grin. Then she left with him. Devastation. Betrayal. A promise sparked in my mind. I would rise and he would fall. Before we begin, let me know where you're tuning in from down in the comments. And if you enjoy this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss our next tale. I still remember the way Krista's hair looked that night. A simple updo that showed off her delicate neck, a sight I once believed was just for me. It was the annual holiday party at my software firm Glenmore Innovations, a modest company where I worked as a lead programmer. People often think programmers are all about algorithms and code, but that night my thoughts were anywhere except on C or Java. I was too busy watching Krista move around in her sleek dark green dress, greeting my coworkers like she'd known them for years. Krista and I had been married for nearly 4 years, and we dated for 2 years before that. I'd always seen her as an anchor, warm, caring, and supportive in ways I never thought I deserved. Before we left for the party, I remember she teased me in the car, tapping the steering wheel with glossy nails, saying, "Liam, I bet you're the star at this place. They'll be giving out awards for best code or something, right?" I laughed, brushing it off. Little did I know that would be the last moment of genuine, innocent fun we'd share that evening. The Redwood Banquet Hall was already buzzing when we arrived. Fairy lights draped the ceiling, while a local cover band strummed gentle rock music in the background. My boss, Damien, had spared no expense, from an extravagant appetizer spread to an open bar that put a spark in everyone's eyes. People were in clusters, laughing too loud, leaning into each other. Tech folks can be awkward day to day, but throw a holiday party in the mix and they can become giddy teenagers, letting loose for once. As we headed toward a small group of my colleagues, I noticed a ripple of chatter passing through the crowd. Someone whispered that Roman Mercer might actually show up. Roman Mercer was a name everyone in the tech space recognized. The golden boy of Silicon Valley, a self-made billionaire known for his bold investments in startups that eventually dominated the industry. We'd heard rumors for weeks that Glenmore Innovations had piqued Roman's interest, but it felt more like office gossip than reality. That rumor took on a life of its own, though, because if Roman liked you, he'd show up unexpectedly at parties, factories, living rooms, wherever he felt the next big thing might be lurking. Krista leaned in, eyes flickering with curiosity. "That's the investor guy, right?" she asked quietly. I nodded, swallowing a bit of tension. There was something about the possibility of a man that powerful walking into our humble celebration that rattled me. Not fear, exactly, but an uneasy swirl in my gut. I told myself it was excitement. Surely having someone as high profile as Roman Mercer show up was a good thing. I was proud of my company. I was proud of my work. But my instincts told me to stay wary. I was in the middle of introducing Krista to a couple of my closer co-workers, Lillian from the product design team and Marcus from marketing. They were telling Krista some embarrassing story about me debugging code at 3 a.m. wearing pajamas in the office typical coworker banter when a hush spread across the entrance. The hush felt heavier than usual, like a collective intake of breath. I turned, and there he stood, Roman Mercer. Even if you'd never seen him, the posture alone gave him away, an air of certainty in each step, eyes scanning the room for whatever it was he came for. He was flanked by a woman I didn't recognize, but she had the same magnetic air, if not stronger. She wore a shimmery silver dress that caught every twinkle of the overhead fairy lights. Her confidence was mesmerizing, almost predatory. Whispers darted through the crowd. "That's Roman," Marcus muttered, lightly elbowing my arm. The woman no idea who she is, but wow. Krista lifted an eyebrow as we took in the scene. And in that moment, the woman locked eyes with me, just for an instant flashed a slight, knowing grin, then turned her attention to Roman's side again. It was unsettling, like she'd searched for me in particular, but that was probably my imagination. Still, It felt odd. We continued mingling, though the entire energy in the hall shifted. The band's music seemed subdued, conversation hushed. Everyone craned their necks, wanting to see if Roman would make some dramatic announcement about investing in Glenmore. But Roman looked casual, pausing to chat with Damien, my boss, who was practically glowing in front of him. Across the room, I could see other employees waiting for their turn to approach Roman like he was a celebrity. I took Krista's hand, guiding her toward the bar. She asked for a Merlot, and I settled on a soda water. Alcohol sometimes made me anxious at big events. Over the clinking of glasses, I overheard bits of speculation. He's here to buy the company. He's scouting new VR technology. He's just dating some new woman. All the typical rumor chatter, elevated by the free-flowing drinks. The woman on Roman's arm eventually made her way near us, perhaps to order a drink. Up close, she was even more striking, tall with dark, tumbling hair and a posture that dripped self-assurance. She reached for a champagne flute and turned slightly to us with a friendly smile. "Hi, I'm Celeste," she said, voice effortlessly smooth. "You must be Glenmore's top people, right? Everyone here seems so excited about tonight." Krista smiled politely. "I'm Krista, and this is Liam. He actually works here." I offered my hand. "Hi, Liam." Celeste shook it, a soft but unwavering grip. "So nice to meet you both. I hear your firm is doing some interesting projects." Roman's quite excited. He always gets a feel for the place before taking the next step. She had a way of talking that made it sound like she already knew all our secrets. It was disconcerting, yet I couldn't pinpoint why. Maybe it was the subtle lilting tone in her voice or the confidence in how she sized us up with a single glance. Krista didn't seem bothered, though. She was taking Celeste at face value, which was typical of Krista's trusting nature. Just as Celeste excused herself, Roman came over to stand by her side. He was taller than me at least, and he carried an air of calm. There was no rush in his eyes. It was like he owned the entire banquet hall simply by walking in. "You found the bar, I see," he joked lightly to Celeste, letting that million-dollar grin slip. Then he caught my eye. "I believe you're part of Glenmore's development team, correct?" He extended a hand. "Roman Mercer. Good to meet you." I shook his hand, surprised he knew me from face alone. "Liam," I said simply. "I handle some of our main software builds." He nodded with genuine interest, or at least a perfect imitation of it. "I've read about Glenmore's approach to interactive design. Maybe we'll get a chance to talk more tonight." His eyes flicked toward Krista. "Good evening." She returned a polite smile. "Hi there." Though she was polite, I could see the slight flush on her cheeks. Roman had that effect on people, apparently. Celeste gave me that same small grin before they strolled away, heading deeper into the crowd to greet others. Krista tucked herself closer to me, sipping her Merlot, which had me feeling oddly protective. I told myself everything was normal. People mingle at parties, powerful men show up and talk to employees. That's just how it works. But my stomach did a little flip. Something about Roman's effortless attention, like he'd memorized every name and face before arriving, unnerved me. We wandered through the hall, taking in the festivities. Some coworkers recognized Krista from last year's party and pulled her into conversation. I tried to remain present, but every so often my gaze swept around, landing on Roman or Celeste. They were always talking to someone new, forming small circles that parted like the sea whenever Roman moved. The man had gravitational pull, and I was just some satellite in his orbit. My boss, Damien, hopped up on a small stage to thank everyone for coming. He babbled about the company's success, how we had grown and taken on new contracts. I clapped along with everyone else, but my mind drifted. The air smelled of peppermint cocktails and tinsel, and each Christmas carol from the band felt a little slower than usual, a little more drawn out. I tried to dismiss my anxiety. After all, Krista and I had been looking forward to this evening for weeks. She'd told me she wanted to dance with me, maybe even coax me into singing along if the band played something we both knew. But the presence of Roman and Celeste hovered over the party like an unspoken challenge. It was only a trickle of unease for now, but it had the potential to grow, to drown out everything else if I wasn't careful. At the time, I had no clue just how bad it would get. I had no idea that Roman Mercer's arrival would crack open a door in Krista's heart, a door I didn't even know existed. and I definitely didn't imagine that a single night, one single choice, could unravel the life we'd built together. But that's how these things happen, right? Quietly, subtly. One moment, we're sipping drinks and smiling, feeling safe in each other's presence. The next moment, we're standing on the edge of something dark and irreversible. If only I'd recognized the signs sooner. Maybe I could have saved us both. Maybe. But as I'd learned, some events aren't meant to be stopped. Sometimes you can only brace for impact. I was rechecking the dessert table, some habit I have of needing a moment away, when Krista caught up with me. Her cheeks were still flushed, though whether it was from the wine or the swirl of attention at the party, I couldn't tell. We stood by a tower of glazed donuts and sugar cookies shaped like Santa hats. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked, lightly touching my arm. "You seem quiet." I half smiled. "I'm all right. Just a little overwhelmed by the crowd." She studied me, the same way she'd done a dozen times before whenever she sensed I was bottling up my nerves. "Want to go get some air?" Before I could answer, the cover band switched gears and began a more upbeat track, the kind of pop song people dance to reluctantly at office parties. A small wave of employees and guests drifted toward the center of the floor. Krista glanced at them, her eyes flickering with a bit of excitement. I nudged her gently. "Go. If you want to dance, have fun. I'll be over by the side, watching you show off your moves." She laughed. "You sure?" "Of course. I'm just going to snag a coffee. Meet me by the bar when you're done." Krista squeezed my hand and glided off to join a few acquaintances. In that moment, she looked happier than she had all week. Work had been stressful for her lately. She managed the design section at an upscale decor store, and the holiday rush was brutal. Seeing that carefree side of her come alive put me a bit more at ease. I stood by the espresso machine, filling a small cup, when Damien approached with a grin on his face. "Liam, you see who's here?" I nodded. "Yep, Roman Mercer." Damien let out a breathless laugh. "God, if we can land a conversation with him about expansions, the future of Glenmore could be massive. He's already talked to me about wanting a quick demonstration of our user interface prototypes after the holidays. This could be huge." The boss's excitement was palpable. I congratulated him quietly, though inside that swirl of caution returned. Roman and Celeste had arrived together, but their dynamic wasn't exactly typical for business associates. They seemed to be on a personal wavelength that I couldn't decipher. I parted ways with Damien and circled to the far corner of the banquet hall. Through the crowd, I spotted Krista on the dance floor. She was letting go, spinning lightly with 2 or 3 colleagues, her arms raised in time to the music. For a moment, I felt a gentle warmth in my chest. She deserved to enjoy life. Then something changed. A man stepped into her orbit, tall, confident. He gently placed his hand at Krista's waist. Even from across the room, there was no mistaking that proud stance. It was Roman. I clenched my jaw, telling myself it was just a dance, a friendly gesture. I tried to focus elsewhere, but it was like a car wreck you can't look away from. The band slowed the tune to something mid-tempo, and Roman guided Krista with an assured grace that caught me off guard. She looked up at him, a little uncertain at first, but then she relaxed and let him lead. They spun, and for a split second her gaze landed on me. Our eyes met. She looked flustered, maybe even guilty. Then Roman pulled her close enough that her view of me disappeared behind his shoulder. Tightness bloomed in my chest. I tried to reason. "It's just a dance, Liam. She's not doing anything wrong. This is a party. People dance." But I couldn't silence that gut-churning wave. The sight of Roman's hand resting on her lower back, it was too intimate, too soon. I forced myself to approach the group at the edge of the dance floor. A few co-workers were already muttering, "Who's that guy dancing with Krista? He's smooth as hell." "That's Roman Mercer, the investor. Man, he wastes no time, does he?" Their banter made my ears heat up. I wanted to march over, wedge myself between them, and drag Krista away, but I knew that would cause a scene. Instead, I hovered near the table with others, feigning interest in random conversation. My eyes never left Krista, though. After a couple of minutes that felt like hours, the song ended. Krista said something to Roman, then nodded politely before stepping away from the floor. I turned to block out the co-workers' prying looks, and found a quiet corner near the exit. Sure enough, Krista came over, breathless. "Liam, hey," she began, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. "He asked if I wanted to dance, and I—" "You didn't think to say no?" I asked, my voice lower than I intended. Her cheeks reddened. "It was just a dance. Are you upset?" I pressed my lips into a thin line. "A little thrown off. That was pretty close, Krista." She sighed, glancing down. "I know. He's charismatic. I didn't want to be rude." A swirl of conflicting thoughts rushed through me. I didn't want to scold her, but everything about the way he'd touched her back, how he locked eyes with her, rubbed me the wrong way. "Maybe next time, check in with me first." Her forehead crinkled. "I'm not a kid who needs permission, Liam. It was literally 2 minutes of dancing." I exhaled, trying to calm the sudden tension. "You're right. I'm sorry. It just caught me off guard." She reached for my hand, and for an instant I felt silly for being jealous. "Come on, let's get a drink and find somewhere quieter," she offered. We wandered to the bar. On the way, Roman intersected us briefly, flashing a polite smile. "Krista, that was lovely." He gave me a single nod as though acknowledging my presence, but there was an undertone of confidence in the way he said her name, like he'd already staked a claim I was unaware of. Krista nodded back, a bit awkwardly. "Thanks, it was fun," she said in a tone that was borderline apologetic. When Roman walked away, I noticed Celeste leaning against a nearby table, watching us with a faint smirk. We locked eyes. I couldn't read her expression, maybe amusement, maybe curiosity. Either way, I felt like I was under a microscope. Krista noticed too. "That woman, Celeste, she's got quite a presence." "Yeah," I muttered. "She's with him tonight, apparently." Krista's lips parted, about to say something, but she closed them again. Instead, she turned and guided me toward a set of tall stools near the bar. We perched there side by side, tension still alive between us. She gently laid a hand on my shoulder. "Let's not ruin the evening, okay? We're here together." I wanted to believe that. I nodded, letting her order another glass of wine while I stuck to coffee. We tried to chat about normal things, holiday shopping, which gift to get for my niece, the weird reindeer decorations in the front yard of our neighbor's house. But every time I heard Roman's low laugh echo through the room or caught a glimpse of Celeste gliding around, a fresh wave of unease passed through me. Eventually, Krista excused herself to use the restroom, and I found myself standing alone by the bar. My reflection in the ornate mirror behind the liquor bottles looked tense, shoulders hunched. I didn't like what I saw, a man losing his cool because of a little dance, but I couldn't shake the instinct that Roman wasn't simply being friendly. He had that intangible vibe, the kind that lets him pick any target he wants. And for reasons unknown, he'd picked Krista. I sighed, telling myself the same thing. "Don't overreact, Liam. She's your wife and she loves you. A man like Roman Mercer might cause a flutter, but that doesn't mean she'd betray me over it." I swallowed the tension, plastered a faint smile on my face, and made my way back toward the crowd still trying to enjoy the party. But deep down, something had changed, and I think we both knew it. The first spark of betrayal, if it truly was that, had ignited in the small gap between us, a gap Roman had slipped into as effortlessly as a dancer taking the lead in a slow waltz. Little did I know, that was only the beginning. When Krista emerged from the restroom, she looked caught in her own thoughts. I wanted to walk over, pull her in for a real hug, and just press pause on the entire night. But the mood around the hall kept shifting, fueled by free-flowing drinks and an undercurrent of excitement about Roman's presence. Nearby, a co-worker named Jen, someone from the creative design department, was chatting with Krista. They seemed to be trading small talk about holiday deals, so I inched closer to see if Krista needed me to rescue her from any dull conversation. But as I listened, my attention drifted. Past them, I saw Roman standing near a tall potted plant, quietly checking his phone, his expression unreadable. Celeste appeared at his side, leaning in to speak. They exchanged a few hushed words, then Celeste's gaze flicked across the crowd. Suddenly it landed on Krista. She tilted her head, said something to Roman, and he responded with a slight nod. My heartbeat pounded. It felt like they'd decided something, but I had no clue what. I stepped up next to Krista. "Everything okay?" I asked, giving her an encouraging smile. She nodded, finishing her sentence with Jen about store decor. Then Jen politely excused herself to find dessert. Krista turned, a bit guarded in her eyes. "Hey," she said quietly. "You sure you're not upset?" I forced a small chuckle. "I'm fine, really." That was a lie, but I didn't want to start any friction in front of colleagues. "Let's just—" I never finished because Celeste glided up in that moment, dressed in her silver gown that clung like water. She smiled politely at me, then shifted her focus entirely to Krista. "Hi again. Krista, right?" Krista nodded hesitantly. "Yes." Celeste's lips curved. "Roman asked if you'd like to join him for a quick chat about some design concepts. I hear you're quite into interior design, yes?" I felt my stomach twist. Where had Roman learned that about Krista? She was definitely no industry insider at Glenmore, so who'd told him? But Celeste pressed on smoothly. "He's got a real interest in user experience and aesthetics. I think he'd love your perspective." Krista glanced at me, her face a swirl of caution and, I hate to say, intrigue. Then she turned back to Celeste. "I'm not sure if I can help him, but I'm happy to talk." The tension in me coiled tighter. I caught Celeste's eyes for a second. I had the distinct impression she could sense my discomfort, and maybe she enjoyed it. There was a faint spark in her expression that felt like quiet amusement. Celeste gestured for Krista to follow. Krista hesitated, looking to me for some signal. I managed to keep my face neutral, though inside I was screaming, "Don't leave me here alone." But I also knew I was at risk of sounding paranoid or controlling. "Go ahead," I murmured. "I'll be right here." She gave me a tight smile of thanks, then walked off with Celeste. I watched them approach Roman by that tall plant. Roman's eyes lit up when he saw Krista, and he leaned in, giving her his full attention. They started talking, Celeste stepping aside just enough to let them connect. My chest felt heavy, so I did the only thing I could think of. Wandered to a side table, grabbed a small pastry, and pretended I wanted to taste it. I wasn't even hungry, but it gave me something to do. My coworker Marcus sidled up, following my stare. "Dude, you good?" he asked in a low voice. I shrugged. "Not sure. Roman's I don't know. He's roping Krista into some conversation." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Roman's known for that. He fixates on something that catches his attention. Doesn't matter what it is, he has to explore it fully. Could be new software, or it could be—" He didn't finish the sentence, but we both knew what he was implying. I sighed, wishing I hadn't come to the party at all. Each time I glanced over, I saw Roman leaning closer to Krista, a confident half-smile on his face. Celeste appeared to be playing hostess, stepping in occasionally, but mostly letting them talk. If it really was about design, I couldn't tell by their body language. After what felt like forever, Krista finally extracted herself and walked back. She had that same wide-eyed look as earlier. "That was intense," she breathed. "He asked me about how colors and textures might impact the environment of new tech showrooms or something. Then he started talking about traveling and how he's got these properties all around the world. It was overwhelming." I tried to mask the edge in my voice. "And you're interested in all that?" She shook her head, blinking. "I'm not sure. He was just describing these incredible design possibilities, and I guess I got carried away." "He's a really good talker, Liam." I reached for her hand. "I know he is. Just be careful, okay?" She gave a tense nod, exhaling softly. "Sure. Let's get some fresh air, you and me." We headed toward the outer balcony, stepping through glass doors into the cool December night. The string lights wrapped around the railing cast a soft glow across Krista's face. She folded her arms, shivering a bit, so I shrugged off my jacket and placed it around her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered. We stood there quietly, letting the distant hum of the party fade behind us. The hush of the night felt safer, like we could finally breathe. I was about to ask her if we could slip out early when we both heard footsteps behind us. Turning, I saw Celeste again, though this time she stepped out alone. She gave a light-hearted apology for interrupting, but her gaze drifted to Krista. "Roman wondered if you'd like to see some samples of his new VR showroom design. He set up a small demonstration in one of the private rooms off the main hall." My pulse kicked up. Private room? VR demonstration? That seemed over the top for an evening that was supposed to be about Glenmore's party. I forced a polite tone. Don't you usually do those demonstrations at your own offices? Celeste's mouth curved. Usually, yes. But Roman is spontaneous. He has resources arranged wherever he goes. He's enthralled by new perspectives like your wife's background in design. I felt Krista stiffen next to me. She looked uncertain, maybe torn between curiosity and caution. I gently touched her back. We were actually thinking of heading home soon, I said, not lying. Celeste nodded, looking unperturbed. Understood, though I think Roman really wants her input. Could be an amazing chance to network, Krista. No pressure, but opportunities like this can open doors. She let that sentence linger. I felt Krista's shoulders tense. I knew she was ambitious in her own career. She always said she wanted to expand beyond her local decor store, maybe do something bigger. Celeste, or Roman, clearly had a knack for sniffing out people's aspirations. I'll just pop in for a minute, Krista said, glancing at me in what felt like a silent apology. I'll see what he wants to show me, then we'll go. I nodded, swallowing the sense of dread. Okay, I'll wait here. Celeste flashed me that unreadable smile again. I'll guide her there. Don't worry, it won't take too long. They disappeared back inside, leaving me alone on the balcony. I leaned on the railing, scanning the city skyline, trying to calm down. My breath condensed in the cool air, each exhale a cloud of stress. A private VR demonstration at a holiday party? This was crossing some line, wasn't it? But maybe I was letting paranoia speak. 10 minutes passed, maybe 15. I paced the balcony, then re-entered the banquet hall. The vibe had shifted. Some people were heading out. Others were still dancing or chatting, oblivious to whatever was happening with Roman behind some hidden door. I looked around, scanning for any sign of Krista. Finally, I spotted Celeste near the hallway leading to private conference rooms. As I approached, she blocked my way with gentle insistence. "Liam, they're just finishing up," she said softly. "Roman really values your wife's thoughts. I think you'll be proud." "Proud?" I repeated. She gave a small shrug. "Krista's lovely. Roman sees potential in her. That's a good thing." Something about her tone made my stomach knot. I opened my mouth to demand I see Krista, but just then, the door at the end of the hallway clicked open. Roman appeared, wearing that same half-smile. Krista emerged behind him, hair slightly tousled, her cheeks flushed. Whether from excitement or something else, I wasn't sure. I hurried over. "Krista, you okay?" She nodded, a bit breathless. He showed me some advanced VR visuals. It's incredible. We talked about design possibilities, maybe traveling to see some of his properties." My voice came out sharper than I intended. "Traveling? With him?" Roman interjected smoothly, resting a hand on Krista's shoulder, which made me bristle. "Relax. It's just an invitation for the future. I like surrounding myself with creative minds. If your wife is open to it, I'd love her input on a more global scale." I stepped forward, not even hiding my hostility. "I think that's enough for one night." Krista quickly placed a hand on my chest, as if to calm me down. She glanced at Roman, then at me. "Yeah, we should probably get going," she said, her voice strained. Roman released her shoulder with a shrug, then gave me a small nod, like a victor dismissing his rival. "It was a pleasure meeting you both," he said, though his gaze lingered on Krista a moment longer. Celeste stood off to the side, all poised serenity, as though watching a scene she'd orchestrated. And in some twisted way, maybe she had. I led Krista away, my heart pounding so loud I could hardly hear the band's next tune. Everything about that last half hour felt off, like we'd slipped into territory beyond a friendly conversation. But I hadn't even realized how deep this rabbit hole would go. An hour later, the party was winding down. The music dipped into quieter background melodies, and some staff were already collecting half-finished drinks. Krista and I had spent most of that time trying to cool off. She insisted on making quick rounds, saying goodbye to a few acquaintances. I stuck near the exit, arms folded, wanting nothing more than to leave. From across the hall, I saw Roman still very much in his element, clinking glasses with a small group that included my boss, Damien. Celeste floated between them, occasionally stepping away to talk to random employees. It was as if she had eyes on everyone at once. When Krista finally approached me by the doors, she looked uneasy. "You ready?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She nodded, hooking her arm through mine. We stepped out into the foyer, thick with the hush of night. My mind was already swirling with how to talk about tonight once we got in the car, about whether we should brush it aside or have a real confrontation. But as we reached for our coats, a sharp voice called from behind. "Krista!" I stiffened, turning to see Roman standing just inside the foyer, Celeste next to him. Roman stepped forward, wearing that trademark half-smile. "Do you have a moment?" He glanced at me almost dismissively before refocusing on Krista. She glanced at me. I said nothing, but I know my anger flashed in my eyes. She hesitated, then softly said, "What is it?" Roman's tone was low, warm. "I might be heading to my private estate tonight, and it struck me that we never finished discussing some of your design ideas. I have a private jet leaving in an hour. You could come, see the place firsthand, and we'd talk next steps." My heart hammered so violently, I thought I might pass out. "What the hell?" I murmured under my breath. I couldn't believe he was doing this in front of me. Krista looked stunned. "You're inviting me tonight? That's crazy. It's almost midnight." Roman only lifted a casual shoulder. "I'm spontaneous, and you, Krista, seem like someone who has the spark to match that. If you want to see my property and get a glimpse of real design potential, why not come along? I'll have you back in a day or two." A day or two. My mind reeled. He was basically propositioning my wife with a trip in front of me, as though I were invisible. I stepped forward, ignoring the burn in my chest. "Back off, man." He gave me a lazy glance. "I'm merely offering a business opportunity. It's up to Krista." Krista looked caught in a hurricane of confusion. She turned to me. "Liam, this is ridiculous," I hissed, finishing her sentence. "You're not going anywhere with him." Roman's eyes darkened with challenge. "Why not let her decide if it truly is about her talents?" Before I could unleash the rage boiling inside, Celeste tapped Roman's arm lightly, leaning in. "We should give them a moment," she purred. "Krista, if you do come, it'll be life-changing. But of course, we respect your choice." With that, they both stepped aside, drifting a few paces away but still close enough to watch. I turned to Krista, my voice trembling with barely contained fury. "You can't seriously be considering this!" She swallowed hard, tears brimming at the corners of her eyes. "Liam, it's not that I want to run off, but do you realize how huge an opportunity this could be for me? I never get these breaks." My head spun. "A break? Krista, he's looking at you like prey." She blinked, a tear sliding down her cheek. "I know how it looks, okay? But part of me, I'm curious. He says he has these resources, these connections. It could help me break into a world of design I've only dreamed of." I felt like I was suffocating. "You've known him for 2 hours. "Exactly," she whispered, voice trembling. "And in those 2 hours, he's shown me more interest in my passion than I've seen in a long time." That statement stabbed deep. My heart twisted painfully. "Are you implying I haven't supported you enough?" She shook her head. "Not intentionally, but you're always so absorbed in your work at Glenmore, and I guess I crave feeling special too. Is that crazy? Anger, betrayal, heartbreak." I was a mess of all three. I grabbed her hand, holding it tight enough that she flinched. "Let's go home," I said. "We'll talk there, please." She hesitated, staring at me. Then Roman cleared his throat from behind us. That small sound carried a gravitational pull, and Krista glanced over at him. It was the smallest gesture, but it was like she was tethered to him already. "No." "Krista, don't," I begged, voice raw. Her eyes flicked back to me, swirling with guilt and hunger for something she thought Roman could offer. I just want to see. Let me at least see. It doesn't have to mean anything permanent." The ground seemed to drop beneath me. "You can't be serious." Her chin quivered. "I'm sorry, Liam. I can't explain it, but I need to follow this instinct. Maybe I'm a fool, but I'll regret it if I don't go. I'll come back, I promise." She pulled her hand free from mine, and all I could do was watch in utter disbelief as she walked back toward Roman and Celeste. My world, my wife, drifted away in a moment of heartbreak so acute I could hardly breathe. Roman met my gaze once, no triumph in his eyes, just steady confidence. Then he turned to Krista, hooking his arm around her. Together, they stepped out of the foyer, presumably heading to some glossy car that would whisk them off to the jet. That's when everything inside me snapped. I stormed after them, managing to catch them near the curb outside, ignoring the startled looks of a few last partygoers. "You're not taking her!" I practically roared at Roman, shoving him in the shoulder. He barely stumbled, but his expression tightened with controlled irritation. Krista exclaimed, "Liam, stop it!" Roman gave me a long, cold look. "This is between Krista and me. If she wants to come, she's free to do so." Krista placed a trembling hand on my chest. "Liam, please." I felt the tears threaten behind my eyes, fury hammering my pulse. "Krista, you don't have to do this." She shook her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'm sorry. I just can't walk away. I'll call you. I swear." I stood, frozen in shock, while she let Roman guide her to the waiting black sedan. Celeste offered me a parting glance hard to read. Maybe pity, maybe indifference. Then she, too, slid into the car. The door shut with a deafening thud. The engine revved. They pulled away into the night. I can't recall how long I stood there on the curb, chest heaving, mind spinning in 1,000 directions. Damien passed by at one point, alarmed at the scene, but I shrugged him off. Everyone else was gone or clearing out. The holiday lights around the banquet hall facade blurred in my vision. Finally, I stumbled to my own car. Driving home felt surreal, like I was trapped in a nightmare but forced to keep the steering wheel straight. Every inch of me felt numb and raw at once. By the time I stepped through my front door, I was shaking. That night, I didn't sleep. My phone stayed silent. No texts, no calls from Krista. I roamed the living room in circles, wanting to break everything in sight. My reflection in the window looked monstrous, eyes wild with heartbreak and fury. Sometime before dawn, I realized I had to act. I'd spent too long being mild-mannered, the dependable nice guy who works quietly in the background. Roman Mercer walked in and took from me what I valued most. Krista let him. That betrayal was a crack in my soul that wouldn't ever mend on its own. So I made a decision. Enough was enough. If that man thought he could waltz in and claim my wife, destroy my life, he'd learn he picked the wrong target. I grabbed a large duffel bag, tossed in my laptop, hard drives, anything crucial. Then, with fists clenched, I logged into our shared bank account, transferring everything out. It was rash, but I didn't care. She chose to leave me behind so she wouldn't find me easily when she returned. My heart pounded, tears burning at the corners of my eyes. Every memory with Krista, our wedding, our jokes, the little ways she comforted me collided with the image of her stepping into Roman's car. There was no going back now. By sunrise, I'd loaded what I could into my trunk and slammed the door on everything I once knew. Betrayal had carved a hole in my chest, but maybe revenge could fill it. That was the moment the old Liam died, replaced by someone who was ready to fight back, no matter the cost. The morning after Krista left with Roman, I was still in our living room, wide awake, staring at the half-packed boxes we never got around to finishing since we had no plans to move. The place felt hollow. Every framed photo, every piece of furniture, reminded me of the life that had just shattered my marriage, my trust, everything. My chest felt like a heavy block of ice, refusing to thaw. I glanced at my phone, half expecting a text from Krista, some apology, some explanation, but it remained silent. Instead of drifting into panic, I latched onto an idea that had started forming in my head when I was lying awake. A plan. If Krista could board a private jet in the dead of night and walk out on me, I could walk out on this entire facade of being the nice, reliable husband she'd probably taken for granted. I made coffee and sipped it slowly, even though I barely tasted it. Then I opened our laptop, the one we used for shared finances. Each keystroke felt like stepping further away from who I used to be. Within minutes, I drained our joint checking and savings accounts, transferring everything to a new one I'd created in my name only. Petty? Maybe. But I told myself it was protection. If she'd gone off with Roman, I wasn't about to leave my life savings there for them to blow on fancy champagne and designer wardrobes. After the money cleared, I stared at the screen, my thoughts drifting to the prototypes I'd been tinkering with for months. Glenmore Innovations had given me a stable gig, but I always had bigger ambitions. On a spare bedroom desk, I had a half-finished VR interface that I believed could break open new ground in user experiences. My boss had seen glimpses but never truly understood its potential. I'd planned to refine it slowly, maybe pitch it to my company in a year. But the circumstances had changed. I couldn't stand the idea of going back to Glenmore on Monday like nothing had happened, with everyone whispering about how my wife left me for Roman Mercer. My stomach churned at the thought. So I began gathering every shred of gear I owned: spare laptops, external hard drives, thick notebooks brimming with code sketches, and a half-dozen USB drives I'd meticulously organized. Loading them into duffel bags felt surreal. Around me, the house was still warm from the heater, yet I felt cold, my heart pounding with a fierce, quiet rage. I took a moment to rummage through the closet, grabbing clothes, enough for a few weeks at least. Throwing them into suitcases, I felt the same sense of finality as I did draining our bank accounts. Each piece of clothing was a memory. Date nights, weekend trips, times Krista teased me for wearing that old band shirt from college. Shaking off those thoughts, I zipped the cases and set them by the front door. By the time I'd finished, the sun was glaring through the blinds, casting long shadows on the floor. Any last vestige of doubt about leaving had evaporated. I refused to be the guy who just sat waiting for his wife's call, not after that scene at the Christmas party. I climbed into my car, a battered old sedan we'd shared since we got married. Krista took the newer one to the airport last night, or maybe Roman had sent a driver. I didn't know. All I knew was that this old car felt more me. The trunk was stuffed with my gear, the back seat overflowing with boxes. Before pulling out, I paused to look at the house one final time. The living room curtains we'd picked out together seemed to wave in the breeze, as if mocking me. Goodbye, I whispered, half to the house, half to the man I used to be. Then I drove off, not bothering to glance in the rearview mirror. I ended up at a cheap motel on the edge of town, paying for a few nights in cash. The place smelled faintly of bleach and old carpet, but no one would ask questions there. Dropping my bags inside, I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror. My eyes were bloodshot. My hair was a mess. I splashed water on my face, thinking, so this is what rock bottom looks like. Yet, beneath the raw heartbreak, a spark was flickering an anger that wanted to shape itself into something more powerful than tears. I needed space to figure out my next moves. My phone kept buzzing with messages from mutual friends, probably curious about the drama. I ignored them. A few hours later, I ventured out to pick up a burner phone at a discount store. My reasoning was simple. If I wanted to vanish, I had to cut my digital footprints. I made sure to log out of all social media from my old device, set a cryptic auto-reply on my email telling everyone I was on extended leave. On the new phone, I saved only a couple of numbers, my own bank's hotline, some essential work contacts in case I decided to resign, and maybe one or two friends who I trusted. That evening, as the sky dimmed, I sat at the motel desk, the lamp humming overhead. My laptop glowed with lines of code. My mind teemed with the memory of Krista stepping into Roman's fancy car. I had to do more than run. I had to fight back in my own way. How? That's when an old idea surfaced, an outline for a VR platform I believed would eclipse the current market. With enough polish, it could be valuable to any tech giant. And if one day Roman Mercer stuck his nose into that space, I'd be there, holding the keys. I found myself grinning darkly at the thought of him paying me for once. The man who snatched my wife might become dependent on something I created. A twisted sense of satisfaction curled through me. But first, I had to refine the project, find a safe environment, and secure some real connections. Glenmore wasn't an option. The thought of showing up in the office after everything that happened was unbearable. My plan had to involve anonymity. People like Roman had vast networks, well-oiled PR machines, and private investigators if he smelled an opportunity or a threat. I scribbled a list of tasks in my notebook. Relocate, a distant place where I can work unnoticed. Gather allies, small investors, but keep my name out of it. Develop, finish the VR prototype, test it quietly, and keep it under the radar. Establish an alias. Create a startup brand that leads back to me indirectly. Erect legal shields. Intellectual property is everything in this game. As I wrote each bullet, I pictured Roman's smug face. My chest tightened. I recalled how he barely acknowledged me while whisking Krista away, how she allowed it. My fingers shook, not from fear but from a new determination. When exhaustion finally hit, I flopped onto the motel bed. The sheets felt scratchy, the pillow too flat. Outside, neon signs buzzed from the main road, coloring the curtains in sickly pinks and greens. Sleep came in fits, haunted by half-lucid dreams of Krista dancing in that shimmering dress and me standing powerless on the edge of a crowd. Early the next morning, I woke up stiff and decided it was time to get out of this town. If Krista came back looking for me, or if her friends or family did, I didn't want them finding me here. The city itself seemed tainted by memories. I loaded the car again, checking if everything was in order. Laptops, prototypes, external drives. My entire future was stuffed in those boxes. Then I drove off, passing the city limit sign as a swirl of conflicting emotions rattled in my chest, grief, anger, and an odd sense of liberation. Because as painful as Krista's betrayal was, it also freed me from complacency. I had no illusions that the wound would heal anytime soon. Yet I clung to one mantra. If they think they can just walk all over me, they're wrong. With that thought, I pressed harder on the gas, leaving behind the life I once knew. Outwardly, it would look like I'd cracked under heartbreak, gone AWOL. But inside, I already pictured the moves I'd make to blindside the man who'd taken everything from me. That was the start of my vanishing act, carefully orchestrated, fueled by heartbreak and cunning. I wasn't sure exactly where I'd land, but I knew one thing. The next time Roman or Krista saw me, if they ever did, I wouldn't be the Liam they remembered. I ended up 300 miles away in a small coastal town called West Haven Shore, known mostly for its decent surf and local fishermen's markets. It wasn't flashy, which made it perfect. There were no giant billboards of Roman Mercer's company or hints of the corporate hustle, just a laid-back vibe that promised anonymity. The first morning I woke before sunrise in a rented bungalow, a weather-beaten place that smelled of salt air. The owner, an older woman named Jackie, had asked no questions beyond verifying I could pay the monthly rent. Perfect. I'd told her I was a freelance coder who needed quiet. She shrugged and warned me that the Wi-Fi might be spotty. That was about the extent of our conversation. I threw on board shorts, thinking maybe a morning dip would clear my head. The ocean beckoned at the end of the street, its gray-blue waves rolling gently in the dawn light. Stepping barefoot into the sand felt different, like a tangible reminder that I wasn't in our old suburban home anymore. Here, nobody recognized me. Nobody cared about the meltdown of my marriage. I paddled out on a second-hand surfboard I'd grabbed at a local shack the day before. The water was cool, biting at my skin, but it invigorated me. As I caught my first small wave, I let out a shallow breath, trying to focus on the present moment. Surfing had never been my strong suit, but it offered a strange sense of freedom. There was no room to brood on heartbreak when a wave was coming at you. When I finally headed back to shore, my mind felt a little steadier. I towel-dried on the sand, observing a couple of locals rummaging through fishing nets. They gave me a nod, but no one asked who I was. Perfect. Back at the bungalow, I fired up my laptop. The Wi-Fi flickered. Jackie wasn't kidding, so I hotspotted my phone. This was going to be my new workspace. A small wooden desk facing the window, the ocean breeze drifting through a rickety screen. No fancy monitors or ergonomic chairs, just me and my VR prototypes. I opened the files for my VR interface, scanning the code. My heart squeezed a little. I recalled how Krista used to joke that I was married to my code. She'd sometimes stand behind me, massaging my shoulders, leaving playful kisses on my neck. I pushed that memory away, refusing to let it derail me. I spent hours refining the system architecture, wanting it to handle real-time motion tracking better than any competitor. The concept was a user-friendly platform for interactive experiences, from gaming to educational simulations. If I could nail this, it could be huge. At midday, the breeze turned warm. Sweat trickled down my temple as I hammered away on the keyboard. My mind kept drifting back to one thought. This is the key to hitting Roman where it hurts. Pride, success, empire. Roman thrived on being the biggest name in tech. If I built something he needed or envied, I'd have leverage. Taking a quick break, I wandered to the local diner for a sandwich. It was a rustic place, wooden booths, surfboards on the walls, a TV in the corner playing some old show. I ordered a turkey melt and iced tea. The server, a woman named Brielle, gave me a polite smile. "Just passing through?" she asked casually. "Sort of," I said. "Might stay a while. I'm doing freelance tech work." She nodded, looking uninterested. Perfect. Another person who wouldn't pry. That was exactly why I chose this town. After lunch, I stopped by a small shop advertising used electronics. Inside, an older guy with a gray ponytail introduced himself as Bruce. He had a few dusty monitors and random hardware. "You new around here, buddy?" Bruce asked. "Yeah, needed some extra screens. Working on a coding project," I explained, trying to keep it vague. He eyed me with mild curiosity. "We get a few remote workers, but not many. Surfers mostly. You must be serious about it if you need multiple monitors." I shrugged. "Work's gotta get done, right?" He pointed to a couple of half-decent monitors. "You can test those. They're cheap, but they work." I spent the rest of the afternoon hauling those monitors back to my bungalow, setting up a makeshift workstation. The table barely fit everything, but I managed. Part of me found it darkly amusing. Here I was, a man scorned, exiling himself to a beach town, plotting a high-stakes VR project. Sounded like something out of a bad melodrama. That evening, the red glow of sunset poured through my window as I coded. I kept the door open, letting the salty air mix with the hum of my computer's fan. My phone pinged a few times with unknown numbers. Possibly Krista or mutual friends. I ignored it. Even if it was Krista, I wasn't ready to hear her voice. That fresh wave of pain would break my focus. By the time darkness fell, I'd made real progress. The VR interface was more stable, and I mapped out a preliminary user flow. The next step was to develop a simple demo environment, something that would wow potential backers if I decided to pitch them. I leaned back, listening to the distant roar of the ocean. My arms ached from surfing, and my eyes burned from screen glare. The mental image of Roman's smug face trying to sweet-talk Krista still jolted through my mind. But instead of wallowing in bitterness, I funneled it into coding. Because the code was the key to everything. A new identity, a new future. After a quick shower, I scrolled through the local job boards. Maybe I could pick up some small freelance gigs to keep me afloat. Sure enough, there were scattered listings for mobile app development, website fixes, small-time VR prototypes. Nothing that would scream billion-dollar product, but enough to keep me under the radar while I perfected my grand design. I sent out a few messages, using a slightly different name, Liam K., leaving out my full details. I was careful not to link back to Glenmore or my real resume. This was my new life, partial truths, half-lies. If I wanted to keep Roman off my trail, I couldn't leave any breadcrumbs. Before bed, I set an alarm for dawn. Another surf session might clear my head, then more coding. My old routine commuting to an office, small talk by the coffee machine, returning home to Krista was gone. The loneliness poked at me, but the determination to strike back was stronger. As I lay there, I found my thoughts drifting to an idea that kept me awake. If Krista tried to reach me, would I respond? Did I even want to hear her voice? Part of me yearned for answers why she'd done it, whether she regretted it, but a bigger part wanted to stay hidden, to preserve my rage as fuel. I promised myself one thing. I wouldn't let heartbreak cripple me. Instead, I'd channel it into something unstoppable, because beneath the sunny waves of West Haven Shore, a storm was brewing inside me. It was only a matter of time before I found a way to make Roman's empire quake, the same way he'd shattered my life. And so I surrendered to the darkness, the slow, dramatic churn of my own thoughts drifting off as the ocean wind sighed through the window. This was my life, underground surfing by day, coding by night, quietly fostering the biggest grudge I'd ever known. 3 weeks into my coastal exile, I'd established a routine. Wake early to surf, return to the bungalow to code, then scrounge up local freelance gigs. Evenings were spent building out the VR prototype I was secretly banking on. My plan was ambitious, but required more than just my code. I needed money, eventually, and allies who could help me scale without letting Roman catch wind. One morning, while sipping lukewarm coffee on the bungalow porch, I got an email from a contact named Sarah Cunningham. The subject read, "Local VR Consulting Inquiry." My heart jumped. I'd posted an anonymous ad about VR consulting in a small online forum for tech enthusiasts in the region. I never expected a real bite so soon. Her message was brief but promising. Hi, I represent a small investors circle near West Haven. We're curious about your VR claims. Would you be open to a short demo next week? Best, Sarah C. My hands trembled slightly. This could be the break I needed. If these local investors were serious, they might fund me enough to refine the product. And if I structured it so my real name never appeared on contracts, I'd stay hidden from Roman's ever-watchful business networks. I replied with cautious optimism, suggesting we meet at a neutral co-working space in a nearby town. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I checked it. Liam, it's Celeste. Where are you? Krista's freaking out. Please respond. I stared at the words, my stomach twisting with both anger and an odd pang of longing. Celeste, Roman's companion that night at the party, now comforting Krista? The irony tasted bitter. But apparently, Celeste was still in the picture, maybe playing the supportive friend role. I locked the phone, ignoring her. My strategy was simple. Starve them of my presence, my voice, my existence. Let them stew. Let Krista wonder what the hell happened to her husband. I wasn't going to confirm or deny anything. Not yet. That afternoon, I pulled together a minimalist VR demo, showcasing a virtual environment of a tropical beach. It had interactive elements, a chance to pick up virtual objects, examine them, and toss them in the digital sand. It was just enough to prove I wasn't bluffing about next-gen realism. A few days later, I met Sarah Cunningham at the local co-working space. She was about my age, wearing a casual blazer and jeans, her hair tied back in a low ponytail. Two older men accompanied her. Ken, a soft-spoken retired engineer, and Bryce, a talkative real estate entrepreneur. They explained they were part of an informal group of investors who wanted to dabble in emerging tech. I set up my VR gear on a table in a small conference room. Sarah stepped into the VR environment first, letting out a small gasp as she stood on the virtual beach. She turned her head, and I watched her real-life body spin slowly in the middle of the room. The details incredible, she breathed. Bryce smirked, stepping forward. All right, let me try. He slipped on the headset. In real life, he was a stiff-limbed guy with a permanent crease between his brows, but in VR, he started exploring the environment with a childlike wonder. Ken asked me about the system's potential applications. I explained we could adapt it for real estate showings, medical training, or interactive entertainment. With enough development, it could be integrated into anything from tourism to educational tools. So, who are you exactly? Ken asked, frowning slightly. I've not seen you around the local scene. I kept my tone smooth. I'm just a freelance developer. Worked in tech for a while, had some falling outs with big corporations. I like to stay low-key. Sarah nodded, seemingly unbothered by my vagueness. Well, this is impressive. If we invest, what do you need from us? I'd rehearsed my answer. I need moderate capital to finalize the platform, say, a few $100,000 over 6 months. In return, you'd get a stake in the product's eventual sales or partnerships. Bryce lifted the headset, blinking as he returned to reality. This is damn good. But do you have a brand name? A company entity? I shrugged lightly. I'm calling it Ocean Vista Tech for now. It's in the early stages. I didn't mention that it was basically me coding out of a rented bungalow. They exchanged looks. Ken stroked his chin. We'll have to discuss, but I see potential. Let's keep talking. We agreed to do a more formal pitch in a couple weeks. On the outside, I remained calm. Inside, adrenaline spiked. If these folks funded me privately, without exposing me to the larger tech world, my VR project might bloom into something that could one day rival any competitor, even Roman's. Back home, I celebrated with a cheap beer, pacing the small living room, imagining what Krista would think if she knew I was forging a new path. The thought left me unsettled. Part of me still felt the sting of her betrayal, especially when I closed my eyes at night. But I pushed that aside, focusing on the cause: revenge, success, independence. The next day, my phone pinged again. Another unknown number. This time it was a short message. Liam, please, let's talk. Krista, I swore under my breath, my heart hammered. If she had my new number, maybe Celeste had passed it on. Or maybe she was just trying random numbers. Either way, I refused to reply. Let her wonder. Let her feel even a fraction of the confusion and hurt she'd thrown at me. To bury the knot in my stomach, I spent the next few nights refining the VR environment. I added a day-to-night cycle, dynamic shadows, more realistic water physics. My eyes hurt from hours of staring at code, but each improvement felt like a step closer to overshadowing everything Roman had. At one point, I introduced a testing scenario. Users could walk on a virtual pier, watch the sunset, and hear the soft lapping of waves. It struck me how calming it was, like a place I'd personally want to escape to. If only the real world was that tranquil. Whenever frustration bubbled up, I took a late-night stroll along the actual beach in West Haven. The sky over the Pacific glittered with stars, and the distant hush of waves steadied my nerves. I pictured Roman's empire, tall skyscrapers, fancy jets, paparazzi capturing his every move. Meanwhile, I was out here in flip-flops and a hoodie, forging a Trojan horse of VR code. Around the end of the third week, rumors surfaced in the local forum about a mystery VR developer seeking investment. A user named RogueDev posted a short mention, speculating if it was a legit operation or a scam. I realized I needed an alias to front my communications, so I quickly set up a website for Ocean Vista Tech, using stock images of an office, and typed up a generic About Us page, leaving out personal details. Ken or Bryce must have started whispering about it, which was both good and risky. Good because it stirred potential investor interest. Risky because if the rumor spread too far, Roman might eventually sniff it out. But for now, I felt relatively safe. My biggest fear was that Krista or Celeste might track me down, or that my old boss at Glenmore might wonder why I'd vanished with prototypes. However, I counted on their assumption that I was just a scorned husband in meltdown mode, not a serious threat. Let them assume that. Flicking off the monitor one evening, I gazed out at the moonlit water. A swirl of dread and excitement twisted in my gut. My circle of potential allies was growing. So was my VR project. And with each line of code, each whispered investor meeting, I crept closer to the day I'd stand on equal footing with Roman Mercer, maybe even surpass him. A month into my new life, the ocean breeze felt like home. My bungalow still smelled of salt and old wood, but I'd grown attached to its creaks and drafts. By now, I had secured a handshake agreement from Sarah's investor circle, enough funds to keep my VR project afloat for several months. We hadn't signed official paperwork yet, but they were transferring small amounts into a new business account set up under Ocean Vista Tech. Every day, I inched closer to a prototype that went beyond a simple beach environment. I introduced basic puzzle-solving elements like stacking virtual crates or aligning color patterns with your hand movements. The more I tested it, the more I believed this system could outshine anything on the market. The visuals were fluid, the user interface intuitive, but with progress came obstacles. One afternoon, I noticed odd hitches in the code, occasional crashes when the environment loaded too fast. I spent hours debugging, cursing under my breath. It turned out to be a memory leak that threatened to derail entire demos. If it happened during an investor pitch, it'd kill my credibility. Stress gnawed at me. My bitterness toward Roman fueled me to keep going, but it also weighed on my psyche. Some nights I'd catch myself staring at the screen, beyond exhausted, hearing Krista's voice in my head. "Liam, you're pushing yourself too hard." She used to say that when I forgot to eat or sleep because I was knee-deep in code. I'd shake off the memory, reminding myself she was the one who left. Around that time, I got a tip from Bryce that a mid-level gaming publisher in the region was curious about VR expansions. If I impressed them, maybe they'd license the platform. The thought both thrilled and terrified me. A public license deal risked exposure. Roman's network had eyes everywhere, but the payout could accelerate the platform's development. I debated for a week, pacing the bungalow at night, making pro-con lists. Meanwhile, I discovered a small forum thread discussing new VR technologies. One user, TechGuru99, kept dropping references to Roman's latest acquisitions, hinting that Mercer's scouts were sniffing for fresh IP. Reading those posts ignited the old anger in my chest. I realized time might be running out before Roman's wide net stumbled on my work. To keep a low profile, I used Sarah and Ken as buffers. They'd handle investor calls or questions while I stayed in the background, the mysterious developer. It worked for a while until a local journalist from a small tech blog requested an interview. He wanted to chat with Ocean Vista Tech's founder about cutting-edge VR. Sarah suggested it might build hype. I resisted, picturing the slightest chance Roman or Krista could see that article. Sarah's tone over the phone was calm but firm. "We can't hide you forever, Liam. Investors like a public face." I clenched my teeth. "I'm not looking to be the next celebrity CEO. I just need time." She paused. "Is there a legal reason you're so secretive?" I nearly laughed at the irony. I didn't want to lie directly, so I said, "I have reasons. Personal ones." She exhaled. "All right. No interviews for now, but we might have to rethink that soon." After the call, I pressed my face into my hands, overwhelmed. I felt trapped between needing more investment and fearing exposure. My phone vibrated. Another unknown text. "You may hate me, but Krista's in a bad place." Celeste A. knot tightened in my throat. My mind spun. Was that supposed to guilt-trip me? Did Krista regret everything? Part of me wanted to know details. Was she even still with Roman, or had he cast her aside? Then anger flared. Why should I care if she was upset? She made her choice. But that night, my dreams were plagued by scenes of Krista sobbing in corners of our old living room, the Christmas lights overhead flickering. I woke up with my heart pounding, feeling her absence like a fresh bruise. It stung to realize I still cared on some level, though I buried it beneath my drive for revenge. Shoving those thoughts aside, I poured all my energy into stabilizing the VR system for a big test run. I arranged for Sarah and her circle to experience a near-complete demo at a local event space. I set up a small booth with black curtains, ensuring privacy. The entire event was hush-hush to avoid too much public attention. The day came, and I booted up the VR environment, adrenaline hammering in my veins. Ken donned the headset first, and to my relief, it worked flawlessly. He navigated an interactive puzzle on a virtual beach, then hopped to a desert environment where he could pick up artifacts and place them on pedestals. The transitions were smooth, the frame rate consistent. After Ken, Sarah tried it, her face lighting up. "It's so real," she whispered, turning slowly as she admired the environment. "The potential is massive." Bryce gave me a thumbs up. "If we can push out a licensing deal, you'll be unstoppable. We're behind you." I forced a grin, grateful for their support. Still, a corner of my mind warned me, the more success you gain, the bigger the chance Roman finds you. Once the demo concluded, Sarah told me about a mid-tier corporate group that might want an early partnership. They operate under a holding company, something about Redwood Capital. My stomach lurched. Redwood. That was the name of the banquet hall at Glenmore's Christmas party. Coincidence, perhaps. But paranoia flared. I calmly asked Sarah to hold off on introductions. "Let me finalize a few features first," I lied. She seemed disappointed but understood. Driving back, I found my thoughts drifting in circles. If Redwood Capital or any affiliate had ties to Roman, I risked being cornered too soon. My bitterness was a thick ache in my chest. The day I confronted him, I wanted to be fully prepared. Back at the bungalow, I tried to decompress with a quick surf session. The waves that afternoon were rougher, and each tumble into the water hammered out some of my frustration. Once ashore, I lay on the sand, panting. Staring at the cloudy sky, I replayed the entire chain of events. Krista's departure, my meltdown, my new life. Was it making me any happier, or was I just plunging deeper into obsession? The wind whipped across my face, carrying the scent of salt and seaweed. I reminded myself that I had no choice. There was no going back. The only path forward was to refine my VR masterpiece and stay a ghost until the right moment. That evening, I cooked a simple dinner of noodles and sauce in the bungalow's tiny kitchen. As I ate, I glimpsed my reflection in the window, unkempt hair, tired eyes. Definitely not the same man who left for the Christmas party with a smile and a wife on his arm. Yet a flicker of determination remained. I was forging a blueprint that could dethrone or at least challenge Roman. If he was half the businessman people claimed, he'd be scouring the market for any new VR breakthroughs. One day, if I played this right, he'd realize the best VR out there belonged to the man he underestimated, and so I kept coding. Each bug I fixed, each improvement I made, brought me one step closer to that confrontation where I wouldn't be the victim of betrayal, but the architect of his downfall. 2 years slipped by in a haze of late-night coding sessions and cautious investor meetings, yet it felt like only days had passed since I last saw Krista walk away with Roman. The ache of betrayal never fully dulled, but it evolved into something more controlled, like the slow burn of a distant ember. West Haven Shore, with its unassuming bungalow, had become my quiet fortress. I refined my VR technology under the radar, forging new alliances with small backers who valued secrecy as much as I did. Eventually, word spread about a fresh, cutting-edge VR system that might shake up the industry. Despite my efforts to remain anonymous, the system packaged under my alias Ocean Vista Tech attracted attention from bigger players. I knew this step was risky. More visibility meant a higher likelihood that Roman's network might catch a hint. Still, my VR prototypes were ready for a broader stage. That's how I found myself driving back to the city I once called home, gripping the steering wheel of a rented hybrid car. The coastal breezes and palm trees were behind me, replaced by skyscrapers and honking traffic. My stomach knotted as I recalled all the memories tied to these streets. Krista's laughter while window shopping, the coffee shop where we used to grab lattes on lazy weekends, and that dreaded Redwood banquet hall. I tried to shake those ghosts away and focus on the reason I'd come, a private pitch session for a group of potential partners. I arrived at the Morgan Center, a sleek building known for hosting exclusive business events. The air conditioning blasted as I stepped through the glass doors, scanning the lobby. My reflection hovered in the polished marble floor, older, leaner, eyes that carried weighty experiences. A young receptionist pointed me toward a smaller conference room upstairs, cautioning that the group was already gathered. Entering the room, I found 6 executives seated around a table. At the far end, a man in a crisp suit introduced himself as Derek Vance. He was the lead contact for this potential synergy, known for bridging smaller tech ventures with major investor groups. His eager handshake told me he expected big things from my demonstration. "Liam K. from Ocean Vista, correct?" Derek asked, verifying the name on my name tag. I nodded, trying not to show my tension. We had some small talk about traffic, the typical awkward corporate banter. Then I launched into my VR pitch. I explained how my system used advanced motion sensors and intuitive hand controls to create an experience that felt more lifelike than anything else on the market. As I spoke, I realized my voice was steadier than expected. 2 years of coding near the ocean must have sharpened my nerve. One by one, the executives donned the VR headset, gasping at the immersive environment, my signature ocean beach simulation with puzzle elements. They tested lighting adjustments, motion tracking, and an avatar builder tool that integrated seamlessly with the environment. Near the end of the session, Derek's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, brow furrowing. "Sorry," he muttered quietly. "Somebody from Mercer Tech is asking about a similar VR project." Then, apparently realizing he'd said that out loud, Derek stiffened, clearing his throat. My heart thumped. Mercer Tech. Roman was in the city, as expected, though I'd hoped to keep him at bay longer. I forced a polite smile and continued the demonstration, pushing aside the flicker of dread. Afterward, we gathered for a brief conda. The group seemed impressed, praising the fluid design and robust coding. "We'd like to see if this system could integrate with a potential investor group I'm representing," Derek explained, "but we'll need to set up further meetings. Are you open to traveling for a closed-door pitch sometime soon?" My mind flashed to the possibility of walking directly into Roman Mercer's territory. Still, I gave a measured nod. "I'm flexible, if the terms are right." The meeting wrapped up with polite handshakes and promises of a follow-up. As I exited the building, the late afternoon sun struck me in the face. My chest felt tight, part excitement and part apprehension. Mercer Tech's interest hovered over my future like a storm cloud. Instead of returning straight to West Haven Shore, I made a detour through downtown. A pang of nostalgia hit as I passed streets once so familiar. When the traffic slowed, I spotted a boutique interior design shop, its facade sleek, with a bold sign reading Serenity Interiors. Something tugged at my memory. Had I heard of them before? An uneasy hunch propelled me to park nearby. Through the front window, I glimpsed carefully arranged decor, a minimalist couch, avant-garde paintings, and tall vases. Then my heart nearly stopped. a flash of red hair behind the counter. Krista. There was no mistaking that silhouette, those gentle curves, the graceful way she moved. Her face was turned away, but I recognized her posture. My mouth went dry. I'd spent 2 years telling myself I didn't care what became of her. Seeing her there, so tangible and unexpectedly close, rocked me. Part of me wanted to storm inside, demand she explain how she dared to start fresh after shredding our marriage. Another part felt paralyzed, uncertain if I could handle the emotional blow. Before I could decide, a customer approached her, blocking my view. My legs twitched, itching to leave. I retreated to my car, mind spinning. Why was she here, at a place called Serenity Interiors? And was Celeste involved? I wrestled with the idea of confronting her right then and there. But I reminded myself, I had bigger goals facing Roman when the time was right. Perhaps this was pure coincidence, or perhaps the city was smaller than I'd imagined. My breath shuddered as I started the engine, forcing myself to drive away, ignoring the hollowness in my chest. Later that evening, I checked into a modest hotel near the outskirts of town, not wanting to advertise my presence for too long. In my room, I flopped on the bed, phone in hand, scrolling aimlessly. My last unread text was from a friend in West Haven, wishing me luck. No new messages from unknown numbers, which was a small relief. I half expected Celeste to pop out of nowhere, texting me to say Krista had spotted me. But there was only silence. I flicked off the lamp and lay in darkness, replaying the day's events in my head. Roman's name had slithered into the conversation at the pitch, confirming he was still a looming figure. And Krista alive, well, apparently running an interior design shop. The city was big enough to keep us apart if I wanted, yet small enough for random collisions. My phone buzzed with an incoming email from Derek. He had a place in mind for a special VR demonstration within the next week or two. The location was undisclosed. The secrecy only tightened the coil in my stomach. This was it, Roman's circle was closer than ever. Staring at the glowing screen, I realized how precarious my journey had become. The revenge I'd painstakingly planned hovered on the horizon, and I was about to step deeper into the lion's den. As I sank into a restless sleep, one image kept flashing, Krista's familiar outline behind that showroom counter, reminding me that the ghosts of my past were never truly gone. Days passed after my pitch meeting, each one thick with tension. Derek kept me updated on potential negotiations, hinting that significant players were curious. I could practically feel Roman's influence creeping in. Meanwhile, I holed up in that modest hotel room, fiddling with my VR rig, fine-tuning small details in anticipation of the next demonstration. One morning, with a cup of stale hotel coffee in hand, I wandered the city's streets. A kind of strange nostalgia tugged at me. This was once my home. The corner bakery where Krista and I shared lazy Sunday pastries was gone, replaced by a trendy juice bar. The bookstore we used to browse on date nights had closed. Everything felt both achingly familiar and alien. I was about to return to my car when I spotted a cafe called Maple and Thyme. The name rang a bell. Krista had once mentioned it as a spot she'd like to try. I debated whether to go inside or retreat. Before I decided, the door swung open. A young woman with curly hair stepped out, and behind her, Krista appeared. She froze mid-step, recognition dawning in her eyes. My heart drummed so fiercely I thought it might burst. I hadn't prepared for a face-to-face confrontation, not here on a random sidewalk. My stomach lurched. Krista's breath caught audibly. She looked different, hair slightly shorter, her features sharper, but her green eyes were the same. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to keep a neutral expression. "Hello, Krista," I said quietly. Her lips parted, but for a moment she made no sound. Finally, she stammered, "Liam, you're here. I didn't know." Her gaze flicked over me like she couldn't decide if I was real. The cafe patrons streamed around us, oblivious. I squared my shoulders, a swirl of anger and longing colliding in my chest. "I'm in town for work," I managed, my voice devoid of warmth. Krista's eyes glistened with unspoken emotions. "I heard rumors you vanished after that night," she admitted softly. "Then Celeste hinted you were working on something big, but you never responded to me." I recalled the unanswered texts, the desperation I once felt. My jaw tightened. I had reasons to keep my distance. She nodded, biting her lip. I understand. Or at least, I'm trying to. Silence draped over us, thick with memory. Krista shifted her feet, glancing at the friend who waited a few paces away. The friend politely drifted toward the parking lot, giving us space. Krista exhaled, voice trembling. "How have you been?" I snorted, unsure whether to laugh or lash out. "You want a polite answer or the truth?" She flinched, her features pinching with regret. "The truth, please." "Then I've been busy," I said coolly. "Building a new life, trying to forget the old one." Her eyes shone with tears she refused to let fall. "Liam, I never wanted to destroy us. You have to believe that." I stepped back, a bitter smile curling my lips. "Right, of course. You just wanted a little taste of Roman's private jet. No big deal." She looked away, pained. "It wasn't about that. It was never about money or jets. I was lost. I made a terrible mistake. Roman's charm, he offered me something I thought I wanted. I didn't want to rehash the details. My fists clenched. And now? Did your time with him pay off?" She inhaled shakily, wiping at the corner of her eye. "It ended after a few months. It just wasn't right. I was humiliated and alone. Celeste helped me start Serenity Interiors. I've been trying to rebuild." The mention of Celeste triggered a swirl of mixed feelings. She'd been Roman's companion, yet later she apparently supported Krista. I let out a hollow chuckle. "Rebuild, huh? That must be nice?" Krista swallowed. "You look different, Liam. Harder, maybe, but I'm glad you're okay." I worried so much. "Don't pretend you cared," I spat, hurt lacing my tone. She flinched again, her tears threatening. "I do care, even if I can't fix the past." A group of shoppers ambled by, forcing us to shift closer to the cafe wall. Krista's perfume, faint notes of jasmine stirred memories I fought to suppress. My pulse raced, torn between the desire to hold her and the rage that fueled me. I stared at her, letting a heavy moment pass. "I can't do this right now," I muttered, stepping sideways. My chest felt tight, my mind spinning with too many emotions. Krista's voice trembled. "If you ever want to talk or just yell at me, I'll listen. Please, Liam." I hesitated, hating the flicker of sympathy that rose inside me. "Maybe," I mumbled, though I wasn't sure I meant it. Then I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in heartbreak. Back at my hotel, I flung myself onto the bed, mind raging. Seeing Krista had cracked something in me, reminding me of softer memories I'd tried to bury. I recalled the nights we'd spent laughing over takeout, or slow dancing in our small living room when no one was around. My head told me to cling to anger, but my heart ached at the raw sorrow in her eyes. I forced myself to focus on my phone. A notification from Derek caught my attention. He'd scheduled a follow-up VR meeting at a discreet location downtown. My chest constricted. This was probably the next step in luring Roman's associates, or maybe Roman himself, into investing. Perfect timing. My confrontation with Krista only stoked the determination to finish what I'd started. Late that night, unable to sleep, I wandered the empty streets. Headlights swept by, turning corners into the darkness. Passing a closed bakery, I remembered how Krista and I once joked about opening our own cafe after we retired. The joke felt hollow now. Eventually, I sat on a cold bench outside a silent bus stop, letting the city's hum fill my ears. I needed to keep my eyes on the bigger target, Roman. He was the man who snatched everything from me. Or had I given it away by not holding Krista tight enough? The question gnawed at me, refusing to be answered. In the distance, neon signs blurred, reminiscent of the West Haven nights I'd spent alone. Despite my swirling regrets, one thing remained crystal clear. I couldn't let this reunion derail the revenge. Roman's empire was next on my list, and Krista hurt, remorseful as she was belonged in the messy swirl of my past. I told myself that was enough. And yet her tearful gaze haunted me, making me question whether vengeance was still the only path forward. Barely 2 days after my tense encounter with Krista, I found myself stepping into an upscale lounge known for private business meetings. Derek had arranged a preliminary celebration, inviting me to discuss the VR platform's future. The lounge was all soft amber lighting and plush armchairs, discreetly divided into smaller alcoves for hush-hush negotiations. I settled into a corner booth, scanning the crowd. Young professionals sipped cocktails, old money investors chatted in low tones. A jazz trio played subdued music near the bar. Derek arrived soon after, greeting me with a wide grin. "You're about to meet some key stakeholders," he said under his breath, handing me a neat whiskey he'd ordered. He introduced me to a pair of middle-aged men in sharp suits, Jensen and Harvey, apparently representing a powerful board. They seemed eager, dropping hints about new expansions that needed cutting-edge VR solutions. My pulse quickened at each subtle mention of rapid integration or top-tier corporate alliances. The noose was tightening. Roman Mercer's name might as well have been etched in the air. After some small talk, Derek excused himself to grab more drinks. That's when I sensed a figure approaching. I glanced sideways and nearly choked on my whiskey. Celeste. She wore a sleek, black dress, her gaze steady as she focused on me with an unreadable expression. "Liam," she said quietly, her voice smooth as the jazz playing in the background. My mind flashed to the Christmas party, Celeste gliding around in silver, distracting me while Roman cornered Krista. The memory tightened my throat. "Didn't expect to see you here," I replied, forcing calm. She nodded at the two men, offering them a polite smile. Then she looked back at me. "Mind if we talk? Just for a moment?" Jensen and Harvey excused themselves, clearly respecting Celeste's presence. Maybe they recognized her from some high-powered events. As she slid into the booth across from me, I caught a faint scent of vanilla. "I heard you're the mastermind behind Ocean Vista Tech," she said, arching an eyebrow. "Impressive work." I studied her. "You've been keeping tabs on me?" She gave a sad half-smile. "After everything that happened, I stayed close to Krista. She wanted you to be safe, even if you refused contact. I also do business consulting on the side, so I catch wind of things." A flicker of annoyance burned in my chest. "So you're here to what? Deliver a message from Krista? Or from Roman?" Celeste raised a hand, palm out. "I'm not with Roman, not anymore. I parted ways a while ago, though we remain cordial. But that's not why I'm here. I'm representing a firm that invests in emerging tech. They wanted me to see if your VR system could be integrated into certain lifestyle applications." I scoffed. "You're my new potential client? That's a coincidence." A flash of guilt crossed her face. "There's more to it than coincidence. I asked to be assigned to this deal when your name surfaced. I needed to speak with you, away from Krista's heartbreak." I eyed her warily. "Speak about what?" Her gaze darted across the lounge, ensuring no one was eavesdropping. "Roman has heard rumors about a VR platform that's poised to outshine current market leaders. He's ramping up acquisitions to find it. He doesn't yet realize the main developer is you." My mouth went dry. Despite bracing for this, hearing it aloud rattled me. "So he's sniffing around," I said softly, more to myself than her. Celeste nodded. "He's thorough. If you keep escalating, it's only a matter of time before he pieces everything together." A swirl of triumph and anxiety churned in my gut. I wanted Roman to step into my trap, but I also feared an early confrontation. "And what do you recommend, Celeste?" I asked with a bitter tinge. She sighed. "I'm not your enemy, Liam. I saw how broken Krista was after Roman lost interest in her. She's been rebuilding her life, and I helped her. But I also see what you're doing. This isn't just business. It's vengeance." I leaned forward, voice low. "He humiliated me in front of everyone I knew. He stole my wife." Her eyes flickered with empathy. "I'm not defending him. I just know how destructive he can be if cornered. Be careful." A tense silence followed. I wondered if Celeste's caution was genuine concern or a ploy. Her tone, though, carried a sincerity that was hard to fake. "Look," she whispered. "Krista hasn't told me the details of your reunion, but she's shaken. She wants to talk to you properly. I'm not forcing it. But if you have unresolved questions, let her answer them before it's too late." My chest tightened. The image of Krista's tearful eyes flashed in my mind. "I have more pressing matters," I muttered, wishing I believed that wholeheartedly. Celeste exhaled softly. "All right. If you won't see her, at least understand that Roman is close to discovering your identity. And if he does, he'll come at you with everything he's got. Don't underestimate him." I swallowed. "Thanks for the warning. Now about your firm's interest?" Is that real? She slid a small business card across the table. Yes, I wouldn't pretend otherwise. They'd love to partner, but they'll need deeper demos and a timeline for mass market release. That might conflict with your hush-hush approach. If you're interested, call me. If not, no hard feelings. As I took the card, a flicker of relief mingled with suspicion. Celeste was indeed bridging worlds Krista's sorrow, Roman's looming threat, and now a potential new channel for my VR. You always manage to be in the center of things, I said wryly. She gave a rueful laugh. Occupational hazard, and, if I'm honest, I feel responsible. That night at the Christmas party, I was part of Roman's manipulations. I can't fix what happened, but maybe I can prevent further damage. Her words, raw with regret, chipped at my defenses. Still, I kept my voice firm. If I need help, I'll consider your offer. But let's be clear, I don't trust easily. Celeste rose, smoothing her dress. I understand. Just be aware, if Roman finds out who you are, he'll try everything from hostile buyouts to personal intimidation. That's who he is. I gave her a curt nod. Duly noted. She cast one last glance at me, as if weighing whether to say more, then pivoted gracefully, disappearing into the crowd of business people. My heartbeat thundered. It felt like I'd just glimpsed the tip of a looming iceberg. A minute later, Derek returned with a fresh drink, unaware of the significance of my conversation. He launched into talk about the next demonstration, oblivious to the swirl of tension Celeste had unleashed. I forced a calm expression, my mind reeling from the knowledge that Roman was actively hunting the mysterious VR developer. That night, after returning to my hotel, I stared at Celeste's card. On one side was the contact for her new firm. On the other was her personal number. Sighing, I locked it in my bag, unsure if I'd ever dial those digits. Part of me resented her intrusion, but another part appreciated the blunt warning. Roman was close. I could almost sense his shadow creeping across my path. And if Celeste was right, I had only a small window of time before he realized the target of his next acquisition was the very man he once dismissed as a pitiful nobody. A dark thrill shot through me. Let him come, I thought. I've been preparing for this confrontation for 2 years, and I won't back down now. 2 days after my meeting with Celeste, Derek scheduled an urgent call. His voice crackled through the line, brimming with excitement. We have a potential mega deal, Liam, he said breathlessly. A powerhouse investor group is ready to put serious capital into your VR platform provided you demonstrate full-scale functionality. They'll have their lead negotiators on site. This is your chance to blow them away. My pulse hammered with a mix of excitement and trepidation. This had to be Roman's circle or an affiliate. My plan all along was to catch Roman in a situation where he'd be desperate to gain the upper hand, and I'd yank it away. All right, I said. Where and when? Derek rattled off details of a clandestine conference in a private suite at the Starling Tower. Very hush-hush, high security, NDAs required. Perfect. They're not revealing their company name yet, but if we land this, you'll be unstoppable, he promised. I recognized the address as a building known for housing high-profile negotiations. My instincts screamed that Roman Mercer's fingers were all over this. I forced a calm acknowledgement. I'll be there. Just prep me with any relevant data you have on them. That night, I spread out my code notes, re-verifying the sabotage plan I'd quietly woven into the VR architecture. The system itself was top-notch, but I'd hidden backdoor triggers that could cause controlled malfunctions if I withheld a key patch. If Roman or his proxies bought into my technology at a high price, I'd hold them hostage to updates. Forcing them into dependency was the core of my revenge. Still, a pang of guilt lurked. Memories of seeing Krista, the sorrow in her eyes, Celeste's warning. Did I really want to push Roman to the brink? My bitterness roared yes, reminding me how he'd shattered my world. The following evening, I arrived at Starling Tower with a rolling equipment case. Derek greeted me in the lobby, looking sharp in a tailored suit. He handed me an NDA document. They'll want you to sign before we go up. Standard procedure, he mumbled. I skimmed it. The language was vague about the investor group, calling them Red Peak Holdings. My suspicion flared yet another shell company. The words Mercer Tech never appeared, but I smelled Roman's involvement. My stomach twisted, though I maintained a steady facade as I signed. A uniformed guard led us to a top-floor suite. Inside, I discovered a wide-open space with plush white couches and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering cityscape. Two men stood by the windows, murmuring quietly. Another, slightly older, was seated, scanning a tablet. None were Roman, but their polished aura reminded me of high-level deal-makers. Without preamble, I set up my VR station. Anxiety coiled in my gut, but I channeled it into methodical preparation power cables, sensors, the headset. The older man at the tablet approached, introducing himself as Mr. Kane. "We're excited to see what you've built," he said, voice deep and courteous. I offered a practiced smile. "I appreciate the opportunity. Let's dive right in." I launched the VR environment, a sophisticated cityscape designed to show potential for training simulations, architectural previews, and even gaming expansions. The men took turns exploring, marveling at the smooth transitions and realistic physics. Mr. Kane asked pointed questions about scalability and commercial licensing. My answers flowed easily, honed by months of practice. Meanwhile, Derek stood to one side, beaming at me, occasionally chiming in with praise. Through the corner of my eye, I noticed the other two men whispering. My adrenaline spiked, half expecting Roman to stroll in at any moment. Finally, Mr. Kane cleared his throat. "We're impressed. Our principals have deep pockets and strategic alliances that could catapult your platform worldwide, but they'll want exclusivity, heavy equity, and an accelerated timeline." I feigned consideration, though I anticipated these demands. "I'm open to negotiation. What kind of figure are we talking?" Kane exchanged glances with the others. Then he named a sum that made Derek's eyes widen 8 figures easily. My heart pounded. That kind of money would transform me from a hidden developer to a major player overnight. But if Roman truly lurked behind this group, I'd be walking into a trap of my own design. A thrill shot through me. I let a silence stretch before answering. "That's a serious offer. I assume there'll be contract specifics regarding intellectual property. My architecture is complex, and I'd need to ensure partial retention of certain updates." Kane nodded. "We can structure it so you retain day-to-day oversight. However, our principals expect a quick rollout. They'll want your official demonstration at a private estate next week. If that goes well, final documents can be signed." A private estate. The words triggered a flashback of Krista stepping into Roman's car, heading off to an estate or jet somewhere. My jaw tensed. Perhaps this was exactly the moment I'd spent 2 years building toward. "All right," I murmured. "Send me the details and I'll consider it." As the men began packing up, one of them received a phone call. He answered quietly, then turned to Kane. "He'll be arriving shortly," was all he said. I exchanged a quick, knowing look with Derek. We both sensed a wave of tension fill the suite. The older man guided us toward a smaller conference room, suggesting we wait. My pulse raced. Was he Roman? We settled in the side room, a glossy table in front of us. The seconds ticked by. Outside the window, the city lights blinked, each one a reminder of the labyrinth I'd stepped into. Derek shrugged at me, brows raised as if to say, "Anything can happen." Suddenly, one of the men poked his head inside. "There's a change of plans. The principal cannot make it tonight. We'll finalize scheduling for the next demonstration soon." His tone carried disappointment, as though something unexpected had prevented the top brass from showing. I nodded, masking my disappointment. I'd braced for a dramatic face-to-face with Roman. Instead, we were left with a cryptic promise of a private estate demonstration. The men thanked me again, urging me to be ready in a week or so. Then, almost as quickly as we arrived, Derek and I were ushered out. In the elevator, he rubbed his temples. "That was intense. Did you see the offer? Man, we're in the big leagues now. Why do I feel like there's more going on behind the curtain?" I forced a short laugh. "You're not wrong. Let's just say I have my suspicions about who's pulling the strings." He glanced at me curiously, but I offered no further explanation. My mind raced. The next demonstration was the real test. They'd want me under one roof with top decision-makers, presumably Roman among them. That's when the final piece of my revenge plan would snap into place if everything went right. Exiting Starling Tower, the cool night air hit me. I pulled my jacket tight, rolling my VR gear behind me on squeaky wheels. The meeting had ended in a cliffhanger, fueling the restless spark in my chest. As I reached my car, a single text glowed on my phone from Celeste. "He's close. Be ready." My lips curled into a grim smirk. Indeed, I was ready to watch Roman Mercer walk into the trap. Soon, he'd sign the dotted line for the best VR on the market, never suspecting the developer behind it all was the husband he once discarded like an afterthought. I arrived at a private estate on the outskirts of the city just past dusk, the orange glow of the sky fading into a bruised purple. Derek had texted me last-minute directions, revealing only that the final negotiation would happen here, far from prying eyes. My gut churned with anticipation. This was the moment everything had been building toward. Towering hedges lined the driveway, lit by discreet ground lamps. The estate itself loomed in the distance, modern in design, yet carrying an air of old-world grandeur. Stepping out of my car, I rolled my VR equipment behind me, scanning for signs of Roman Mercer's presence. The quiet hum of cicadas filled the warm night air, while a distant fountain gurgled softly. A suited attendant opened the door, guiding me through a sleek foyer into a spacious living area. Marble floors, a vast skylight, and tasteful abstract art created a scene of understated wealth. The attendant gestured to a side room where Derek, looking pale with nerves, waited alongside two men in tailored suits. The older man introduced himself as Grant, an advisor. The other, Soren, kept checking his phone like he was expecting an important call. My heart hammered. Within minutes, two more arrivals joined us, Mr. Kane from our earlier meeting and a tall woman named Fiona who said little. They all wore the expressions of seasoned deal-makers, courteous but guarded. Derek nodded at me, clearing his throat. "We're just waiting on one more principal," he murmured, too quietly for the others to hear. I busied myself unpacking the VR gear, my fingers fumbling slightly. My throat felt dry. This was it. The meeting that would finalize an 8-figure contract or set in motion the final stage of my revenge. Footsteps echoed from the hallway. I glanced up to see a figure stride in, Roman Mercer, in a charcoal suit, hair neatly combed back, exuding that familiar blend of confidence and command. My stomach twisted with a sudden dizzying surge of fury and triumph. For a second, neither of us spoke. He studied me with polite curiosity, like he hadn't yet connected the dots. Derek performed hasty introductions. "Roman Mercer, meet Liam Kay, our lead developer at Ocean Vista Tech." Roman extended a hand, eyes narrowed as if scanning my face for clues. His handshake was firm, but I returned it with equal force, letting the tension linger. "Pleasure to meet you," Roman said, voice velvety smooth. His gaze carried a flicker of suspicion, perhaps some faint recognition, like a dream half recalled. My pulse thundered. I forced a controlled smile. Likewise. We moved to a large table with sleek black chairs. Grant asked me to set up my VR demonstration. As I positioned sensors, Roman stood off to the side, typing on his phone. I caught Celeste's warning echoing in my head. He will do everything he can to secure the best VR on the market. Once everything was ready, I guided Soren and Fiona through the environment, a multi-tiered cityscape that seamlessly transitioned into a futuristic simulation center. Their hushed awe was apparent as they navigated with intuitive controls. Roman watched from a few feet away, arms crossed, brow furrowed. When they finished, Roman stepped forward. "Mind if I try?" His tone was casual, but the intensity in his eyes gave him away. "Of course," I said, handing him the headset. I suppressed a grim smile as he immersed himself. For several minutes, Roman swiveled his head, exploring the VR world I'd painstakingly built. The man who'd once dismissed me now stood amid my creation, unknowingly standing on the threshold of the trap I'd set. He removed the headset with measured grace, exhaling. "Impressive," he acknowledged. "Your system is clearly advanced beyond what's on the market. How soon can we roll this out at scale?" Grant and Mr. Kane exchanged glances, letting Roman take the lead. I noticed Derek fiddling anxiously with his tie, perhaps sensing the tension. The others parted, forming a semicircle around Roman and me. I folded my arms. Scaling isn't an issue if we secure the right investment, but I'd retain oversight. My team holds the keys to the system's updates. Roman nodded, stepping closer, still not recognizing me, at least not fully. "We want exclusivity, immediate integration. Name your price." An almost dizzy euphoria rippled through me. Finally, the legendary Roman Mercer was asking me for a price. I watched a faint line crease his forehead, that flicker of curiosity about my identity growing stronger. But he said nothing, waiting. I cleared my throat, feigning professionalism. We have a figure in mind that covers full acquisition, plus a royalty structure for expansions. I rattled off a high sum, higher than the earlier negotiation points. It was the number that would simultaneously feed my revenge plan and secure my future. Roman's gaze narrowed, but he showed no sign of balking. "Let's talk specifics," he said, gesturing for the group to join us at the table. Grant produced a thick binder, pre-prepared documents for an advanced letter of intent. My heart pounded. This was it, the contract that would place Roman's empire at my mercy. As we sifted through the pages, Roman asked direct questions about code architecture, future patches, and how the system would handle expansions. I responded with careful half-truths. Yes, the VR was robust. Yes, we had a pipeline for updates, but I omitted any mention of the hidden triggers I'd built in. All the while, I felt Roman's stare picking at my composure like a hawk. At one point, he paused, turning to me. "Liam K. That name. Have we crossed paths before?" His eyes carried the faintest glint of recollection. I shrugged. "Not that I recall," I lied smoothly. "I followed your work, Mr. Mercer, but we haven't officially met." He studied me for a beat, lips pursed, then exhaled. Must be my imagination. He returned to scanning the contract, but the seed of suspicion was planted. An hour later, we adjourned for a short break, with Mr. Kane insisting on verifying some financial details. Derek drifted to a quiet corner to take a phone call. Meanwhile, Roman approached me, arms folded. A sliver of the tension between us crackled in the air. He glanced around to ensure privacy. "Let's cut to the chase," Roman said in a low tone. "I want your system. If your code is as good as it appears, we can push it global in record time. You'd be on top of the world. Are you prepared to handle that success?" His question hung in the hush of the estate's living room. I looked him straight in the eye. "I've been preparing for this moment longer than you realize." Roman's gaze lingered, as if trying to decode my hidden meaning. Then Mr. Kane called him back, asking for final sign-off on a portion of the contract. Roman gave me a slight nod before stepping away. I inhaled shakily, every nerve tingling. The next step would be the official signature, forging a partnership that gave Roman partial ownership of my VR. The cunning part, I retained control of critical updates. He'd become dependent on me, or so I wanted him to think. Soon enough, his entire operation would revolve around my patches. That was the heart of my sabotage. But part of me, the corner of my conscience that remembered Krista's tearful apology and Celeste's caution, trembled at how far I was taking this. Was I truly ready to watch Roman's empire collapse if it came to that? My anger whispered yes. My uneasy gut said maybe not. Yet the contract was moments away. Summoning calm, I rejoined the group. Roman gave me a thin smile, pen in hand. "We finalize now, yes?" I glanced at Derek, who nodded. Outside, the cicadas were louder, as if heralding the final act of a slow, dramatic film. My heart pounded in my ears. "Yes, let's finalize," I said, my voice steady. "I'm ready." We reconvened in the estate's grand lounge, a place more suited to lavish parties than tense contract signings. A crystal chandelier glinted overhead, illuminating the table where Roman, Grant, and a few others scrawled their signatures on thick legal papers. My own signature followed, each pen stroke a step deeper into the labyrinth I'd engineered. Roman extended his hand to me once the papers were done. His grasp was firm, a flicker of curiosity still in his eyes. "Welcome aboard," he said, voice clipped yet polite. I nodded, saying nothing. Inside, adrenaline coursed through me like wildfire. The plan was set. Roman Mercer, the man who stole my wife and humiliated me, was now tied to me by a multi-million-dollar contract. My VR company, at least the public face of it, would partner with Mercer Tech. The final blow waited behind a simple line of hidden code. One by one, the other parties drifted away to celebrate or call it a night. Derek patted my shoulder, beaming. I gave him a tight smile, claiming exhaustion as an excuse to slip outside for air. Under the moonlight, the estate's garden sprawled in geometric patterns. I inhaled the scent of jasmine and something else, a faint wave of memory. Krista used to adore jasmine-scented candles. My throat constricted. I was so lost in thought I almost didn't hear the footsteps. Turning, I saw Krista step into view from behind a stone arch. My pulse lurched. She wore a simple blouse and jeans, her hair tied back, nothing flashy. Wide eyes met mine, full of apprehension. "Krista," I breathed. "Why are you here?" She exhaled slowly. "Celeste got wind of Roman's negotiations and told me to come. She was worried about you." Her voice trembled, hinting at the swirl of emotions beneath. My anger sparked. "I can handle myself. I don't need you or Celeste to babysit me." She flinched. "That's not why I'm here. I had to see you to beg you not to lose yourself in this feud." In the dim glow from the estate's garden lamps, I caught sight of tears glistening on her lashes. It stirred conflicting emotions, the protective instinct I used to feel for her, and the fury that hadn't died since that Christmas party. I forced a derisive laugh. "You must realize, Krista, that this is my moment. Roman's about to pay for his arrogance." She wrapped her arms around herself as if defending against a chill. "I'm not defending him, Liam. I regret my part in everything that happened. But revenge, can it really fix what you lost?" A raw ache flashed through my chest. "It'll give me closure," I hissed. She took a step closer, her eyes rimmed with sorrow. "After Roman and I ended, I was a wreck. Celeste was the only person who stood by me. But I never stopped thinking about you. You vanished, and it felt like my punishment was never knowing if you were okay." I swallowed hard, memories of the nights I'd spent alone at West Haven crashing over me. "I survived, obviously, and now I'm here." Her voice wavered. "You've changed so much, Liam. Hardened. I see it in your eyes. It scares me." A whisper of guilt pricked my skin. She was right. I was no longer the soft-spoken programmer who flinched at conflict. "You were the one who walked away," I said, voice trembling with old hurt. "Don't pretend I'm some monster you can't recognize." Her tears glistened under the moonlight. "I know I hurt you, but I swear, I never intended—" "Don't!" I cut in, anger rising. "You made your choice. Now I've made mine." She flinched at my tone. For a moment, neither of us spoke, the hush of the garden interrupted only by distant party chatter from inside the estate. Finally, she stepped forward, tentatively placing a hand on my arm. My first instinct was to recoil, but I didn't. Instead, I felt a rush of conflicting warmth. "Liam," she whispered, "if you do this, truly destroy Roman, it won't erase the pain. It'll just breed more." I glared at her, though a part of me wanted to bury my face against her shoulder and release the heartbreak I'd carried for so long. "I'm not after petty destruction. I want him to know what it feels like to lose everything," I said, teeth clenched. She shook her head sadly. "I told you, I'm not defending him. But you're so focused on revenge, you're pushing aside every chance to heal." My eyes stung with unshed tears. "Heal? After you left me standing at that party like a fool?" My voice cracked. "I can't just forget." She bowed her head. "I understand," she said softly. "But I need you to realize that after Roman tossed me aside, I spiraled. If not for Celeste, I'm not sure I'd be here. I've paid my price every day for betraying you." Her words cut deeper than I wanted to admit, my anger wavering. "I don't owe you forgiveness," I managed, though my resolve trembled. "No, you don't," Krista whispered. "But this hatred in your eyes, it's killing me to see. I still love you, Liam. I never stopped. That's the worst part." Pain twisted inside my chest. I wanted to scream at her for lying, for making me feel all these things when I'd fought so hard to remain numb. But her admission hung in the silence, raw and pleading. Before I could reply, a voice called from the estate's doorway. "Liam, they're asking for you to finalize a timeline." It was Soren, one of Roman's men, oblivious to the charged moment. I tore my gaze from Krista, struggling to regain composure. "Coming," I called back. Then to Krista, I said quietly, "I'm in the middle of something. I can't do this right now." She nodded, sorrow carving lines in her expression. "Just promise me you'll think about what I said." I didn't answer. Instead, I turned on my heel, heading inside to rejoin the negotiations. My heart hammered, each step a battle to hold on to the anger that fueled me. Krista's voice echoed in my mind, that plea for me to reconsider. My chest felt tight, but I shoved the feeling down. Inside, the group was reconvening, ready to discuss a plan for the system's immediate expansion. Roman stood at the far side of the lounge, deep in conversation with Grant. If he noticed my shaken expression, he gave no sign. Once more, I plastered on a veneer of cool composure, reminding myself of the sabotage-laced code waiting in my back pocket. But Krista's trembling words followed me, shadows that refused to fade. She claimed she still loved me. Could that matter now, after all the damage done? My throat constricted as Roman looked up, offering a cordial nod. For a moment I imagined letting go of my carefully laid revenge, but the image of him smirking at that Christmas party flooded my memory, reigniting my fury. No, I told myself firmly, stepping up to the table. There was no turning back now. Night stretched into the small hours as the contract team hammered out marketing strategies and product rollout details. Roman's men pressed for an aggressive timeline, wanting to debut our VR system within a few weeks. I played the cooperative partner, all the while aware that a single patch from me could eventually unravel their entire operation. Around midnight, we took a pause so the group could refresh or step outside for calls. My head throbbed from hours of negotiations. I slipped away to the estate's second-floor balcony, seeking a moment of solitude. The sprawling gardens below looked almost surreal under moonlit shadows. I was leaning against the balcony rail when Celeste appeared, her eyes flickering with cautious warmth. I hadn't even known she was on the premises. She wore a simple black blazer and slacks, hair pinned back. "Long night," she commented quietly. I nodded. "You could say that." We stood in silence for a beat, the distant murmur of the negotiation drifting from below. Finally, Celeste spoke in a low tone. "I saw Krista earlier. She was worried sick about you." My jaw clenched. "She found me in the garden, said her piece." Celeste studied me. "She's not the same woman who left with Roman. She's grown, Liam, and she regrets everything." A swirl of bitterness and yearning fluttered in my chest. "I know she regrets it, but you can't expect me to just forget the humiliation." "I'm not telling you to forget," Celeste replied, voice steady. "I'm telling you that if you push this revenge plan too far, you might destroy something you could still salvage." My heart pounded. The summer night's heat felt stifling. "How do you know I have a plan?" I said carefully. She gave a wry smirk. "I'm not naive. I was there when Roman pulled his stunt with Krista. I saw how it wrecked you both. And I've seen how driven you've become, how your VR code has hidden layers." A prickle of alarm tightened my spine. "You've seen my code?" She raised her palms in a calming gesture. "Not in detail, but I suspect you built in a back door or two. People in my line of work hear rumors." That rummaged at my nerves. "You going to warn Roman?" I asked coldly. Celeste shook her head. "I'm loyal to Krista, not him, and you deserve retribution for what he did. But total ruin? That's a dark road, Liam." My gaze dropped to the ground. Waves of conflicting emotion battered me, righteous anger clashing with the empathy Celeste stirred. "Roman deserves to pay," I muttered. "He does," she said gently. "But listen, there's something you should know about Roman's past. The reason he acts like he can buy people and never face consequences." She pulled a small envelope from her blazer. "I found this document months ago, hidden in old files. It outlines a series of questionable acquisitions Roman made early on, snatching smaller tech outfits. There's evidence of intimidation, hush money, lawsuits. Krista never saw these details, but if it went public, it could damage his reputation severely." I blinked, taking the envelope she handed me. Inside, I spotted photocopied pages, old contracts with suspicious clauses, signatures from Roman. My heart pounded. This was bigger than my sabotage code. It was a direct hit on Roman's personal ethics. Celeste sighed. "I confronted him about it once after Krista left. He was unrepentant, but admitted he might have taken things too far. There's a trace of guilt in him, but he's built a fortress around it. He recognized he hurt people, but never had to face real accountability except with you and Krista." My hand trembled. "So you're giving me the ammo to crush him publicly?" She nodded. "Yes, but think about the collateral damage, including Krista's fragile efforts to move on. If Roman's empire collapses violently, she'll be caught in the crossfire, guilty by association in the business world or hounded by media. Krista wants peace, not a scandal. My chest felt like it was caving in. I stared at the pages, imagining how one leak could incinerate Roman's brand, forcing him to kneel before the world. It was a temptation that dripped with satisfaction. Yet Celeste's caution about Krista echoed in my mind. "You realize," I muttered, "that if I don't use these, Roman keeps skating by unpunished." Celeste stepped closer, resting a hand on my shoulder. "I'm offering you a choice. Use them if you must, but weigh the impact on everyone, yourself included. You've come so far, Liam. Don't let vengeance become your sole identity." A swirl of fresh tears stung my eyes. I couldn't believe I was standing here, holding a weapon that could bankrupt Roman, and yet hesitating. "Why help me, Celeste? You said you're loyal to Krista." She gave me a sad smile. "I'm loyal to the truth. And to seeing you both heal. If that means giving you the final piece, so be it." Footsteps echoed behind us. We turned to see Derek stepping onto the balcony, looking flustered. "They need you back, Liam. Roman wants to finalize the integration timeline." I hastily tucked the envelope into my jacket pocket. "I'll be there," I said. Celeste offered a final nod, her eyes urging me to consider carefully, then slipped back inside. Derek eyed me. "You all right?" I mustered a strained grin. "Just tired. Let's finish this." As we re-entered the main floor, a hush settled. Roman stood at the head of the table, arms crossed, posture radiating command. The others were seated, documents lined up. Soren tapped a pen nervously and Grant whispered something to Fiona. Roman's gaze locked on me as I approached, a new intensity in his expression. "We need to confirm a schedule for updates, Liam," he said, voice echoing. "We want to push the VR system out in 2 weeks. That requires ongoing patches from your team." My heartbeat thudded as I thought of the sabotage built into those patches. And now, Celeste's envelope weighed on me like a second option for destruction, one that might bring a humiliating downfall. But in Krista's quavering voice I heard, "This hatred is killing me to see." I took a shaky breath. "Yes, we can do that." My words sounded hollow in my own ears. Roman offered a faint nod. "Excellent." He turned to the others, instructing them to draft a formal timeline. Meanwhile, I stood at the edge of the room, drowning in conflicting impulses. Should I unleash the sabotage? Leak Celeste's documents? Or listen to the flicker of compassion that Krista's pleas had awakened? A wave of dizziness swirled behind my eyes. This was the moment Celeste had warned about the tipping point, Roman or mercy. The lines on the floor seemed to blur under my feet. I was so close to completing my revenge, but I could almost hear the echoes of all the broken pieces it might leave behind. Roman glanced back at me, suspicious. "Something wrong?" I forced a smirk. "No, everything's perfect." Yet deep within, nothing felt certain anymore. Hours later, the estate's guests had mostly retired or left. Roman lingered in the main study, sipping a glass of brandy, presumably to celebrate the monumental deal he believed he'd secured. The lights were dim, the room paneled in dark wood, lined with shelves of old books. I found him there, standing near a wide window that overlooked the moonlit gardens. I stepped inside, the door shutting with a quiet click behind me. My pulse thundered. This was the private confrontation I'd known would come. Roman turned, swirling his brandy. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, the slightest edge to his tone. I gave a tight nod. "We've got a lot riding on this partnership." He studied me in the half-light. "I've dealt with countless developers, Liam, but there's something about you. You remind me of someone I crossed paths with a long time ago." My throat tightened. "Maybe you meet too many people to remember them all," I said, letting a hint of irony thread my voice. Roman took a slow sip. "Perhaps, but I rarely forget a challenge." A charged silence fell. My chest rose and fell with each unsteady breath. The time had come to reveal the truth, to lay bare the reason behind my reemergence. I pulled myself up, meeting his gaze. "I've waited 2 years for this," I said evenly. "To see you again, face to face." Roman frowned, confusion flickering. "What do you mean?" Stepping forward, I let the anger sharpen my words. "I'm Liam Price, the husband you humiliated at Glenmore's Christmas party. The man whose wife you whisked away on your private jet. I spat the words like venom. Ring a bell? Shock rippled across Roman's face, followed by dawning recognition. His brandy glass paused midair. You good God? Liam from Glenmore? The tension crackled like electricity. He set the glass on a side table, blinking. I never expected you vanished. A bitter laugh escaped me. I disappeared, yes, so I could build something you'd want to buy, something that would put me in the driver's seat for once. He recovered swiftly, drawing himself up. So this entire pitch Ocean Vista was a setup? My heart pounded. I built a world-class VR system, yes, but I also designed backdoors. You see, if I fail to push the correct patches, the entire system your company depends on will fail, cost you millions, if not billions. Roman's mouth pressed into a thin line. You're insane, he muttered, though his voice shook with the weight of the revelation. Call me whatever you want, I hissed, but now you know how it feels to be played. He advanced a step. What do you want from me? Money? You already have the contract. I bared my teeth in a grim smile. I wanted you to experience fear, the fear of losing everything you've built, the way you made me lose my marriage, my dignity. His eyes narrowed. Krista wasn't your property. She made her own decision. The remark cut me like a blade. She was my wife, and you manipulated her. My breath shuddered, emotions surging. But she's paid for her mistake. Now, I want you to pay for yours. Roman's expression flickered with something that might have been regret. He opened his mouth, but no words emerged for a moment. Eventually, he said, I did not force her to come with me. I offered the world, and she accepted. Rage flared hot and bright. You used your power to seduce her. You never cared about the fallout. Well, now you face it. He exhaled shakily, raking a hand through his hair. Do you realize the scale of what you're threatening? I can't let you destroy my empire. I'll fight you in court, discredit you. I whipped out Celeste's envelope, brandishing it. And I have evidence of your dirty acquisitions. One leak to the press, and you'll be tangled in lawsuits for years. Even your spin team can't bury it all. Roman's face went ashen. Celeste. She was always rummaging through old files. His voice dropped to a tense whisper. You planned every angle. I nodded, heart pounding. Either I crash your VR rollout, or I torch your reputation with these papers. Your choice. But the days of you strolling away unscathed are over. Silence choked the room. Roman's gaze darted to the window, then back to me. A muscle in his jaw twitched. For a moment I saw the proud mogul crumble, forced to confront the reality that I held all the cards. Finally, his voice broke, raw with an emotion I'd never expected to hear from him. I never meant to ruin your life. I was reckless, arrogant. It was about winning, about proving I could have whatever I wanted. He ground out the words like they tasted foul on his tongue. I'm sorry, Liam, truly. The apology blindsided me. My plan hinged on him showing no remorse. You're lying, I whispered, uncertain. He shook his head, face etched with something akin to regret. I've done terrible things in business. I own that. But seeing what I did to you and Krista, maybe that's the one regret that lingers. I saw her heart break when we parted. I realized I'd toyed with someone's actual marriage. That shame never quite left me. My vision blurred, the weight of his words jarring me. You think an apology fixes it? I spat, though my rage wavered. Roman stepped closer, voice trembling. No, but it's all I have. I can't change the past. If you want to release those documents, ruin me. Go ahead. He glanced at the envelope, swallowing. I'm prepared to face that. A swirl of confusion battered me. I'd craved this moment of triumph, expecting to see Roman squirm with denial, not stand there offering a genuine apology. My chest ached with the memory of Krista's tearful pleas. Was total annihilation truly what I wanted? My voice shook. You can't just walk away from everything you did. He nodded, looking every bit the cornered man. I'm prepared to pay restitution if that's what you need, or if you want me to step aside from certain acquisitions. Tell me. Tears burned at the edges of my eyes. I'd braced for combat, but not contrition. The old fury warred with the faint spark of empathy I'd regained. My entire body trembled with the choice. finalize the kill shot or carve out a less destructive path. A sound from behind startled us. Turning, I found Krista standing in the study's doorway, tears on her cheeks. I had no idea how long she'd been listening. Her voice shook.
"Liam, please don't do this," she whispered. "He's apologizing. Take the victory you deserve, but don't destroy yourself in the process."
Roman bowed his head, saying nothing. The tension was palpable, as though the entire estate was holding its breath. My throat clenched. This was the apex, the final fork. After a strangled pause, I lowered the envelope, meeting Roman's gaze. "I built a sabotage into the VR updates. I could cripple your empire, or I could sign a fair deal. You're admitting you messed up, and you're willing to face consequences?" My voice cracked from the emotional strain. He gave a solemn nod. "Yes, I'll comply with any revised terms you set. Just let's move forward without annihilation." My heart pounded. For the first time, I sensed sincerity behind Roman's steel facade. I closed my eyes briefly, thinking of the hateful nights I'd spent plotting his downfall, and then the heartbreak in Krista's face. Exhaling a shuddering breath, I reached into my pocket, retrieving the digital key for the sabotage code. Slowly, I snapped the USB drive in half, rendering it useless. Roman inhaled sharply, and Krista's eyes went wide. My chest felt light and heavy at once, tears threatening to spill. "We'll renegotiate," I said, voice trembling. "But no sabotage, no scorched earth. I want you to know you nearly lost everything just like I did." Roman nodded shakily. "I do." I pivoted, turning to Krista. She watched with relief shining in her gaze, tears streaming. My heart seized at how broken she looked, yet how hopeful. "I can't say I forgive you entirely," I murmured, voice rough. "But we can start talking." She let out a soft sob of gratitude, stepping forward to slip her hand into mine. The warmth of her touch sent a wave of conflicting emotions through me, but it also felt like a fragile lifeline back to the person I once was. Roman quietly cleared his throat, stepping away to give us space. The hush that followed felt like the calm after a storm. I turned back to him, eyes still brimming with unspoken hurt. "I'll talk to my legal team. We'll draw up a fairer contract that ensures I maintain control but doesn't crush your entire organization." He bowed his head, something like respect flashing in his eyes. "Thank you, Liam." As the adrenaline seeped away, I realized I was left trembling. Krista slipped her arms around me gently, as though unsure if I'd let her. My hands hovered, then wrapped around her waist. The ache of betrayal still lingered, but a raw bond sparked anew. For the first time in 2 years, I felt the faint glow of relief blossoming. In that quiet moment, everything changed. I'd chosen not to annihilate Roman, but to walk a path that reclaimed my dignity and left the door open for a possible new future. I rested my forehead against Krista's, the tears I'd held back slipping free. She whispered through her own sobs, "I'm so sorry, Liam. I love you." My voice cracked. I know. This is just the start." And with that final admission, the tension in the room eased. Roman lingered by the doorway, offering a nod of respect before slipping away. The hush of the estate felt electric, but I couldn't focus on anything beyond Krista in my arms, tears of remorse blending with my own. We stood there, locked in a fragile embrace, forging a new bond out of the ashes of betrayal and revenge. I wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, only that I'd found the strength to choose something other than total destruction, and that maybe, just maybe, healing could begin. I woke the morning after that emotional night at the estate with the sun streaming through unfamiliar curtains. For a moment, I had to remember where I was, some upscale hotel suite. My new contract with Roman's organization made it necessary to stay in the city longer, tying up legal details and press statements. But all I could really think about was how drastically my life had changed in a single night. As I groggily turned over, I noticed the empty space beside me. Krista had her own hotel room down the hall. Neither of us was quite ready to share the same bed after everything. Yet we'd sat up talking in my suite until nearly dawn, tears and relief mingling in that hush of pre-dawn. In the end, she'd slipped out quietly, letting me doze off with her scent lingering on my t-shirt. I finally dragged myself up, rummaging for coffee. My phone buzzed with a text from Celeste. "Heard you two talked all night. Proud of you both. Let's catch up soon." It made me smile sadly. Celeste had been a constant in both our lives, whether we admitted it or not. She was the one who'd first told me that vengeance could eat me alive if I wasn't careful, and she was also the one who'd made sure Krista didn't crumble under guilt. Sipping instant coffee, I flipped on the TV. A local business channel buzzed with a quick mention. A surprising new partnership has been announced between Mercer Tech and an up-and-coming VR company called Ocean Vista. I tensed, hearing Roman's name. But they only offered mild speculation about how a stealthy developer like me had snagged Mercer's interest. They were clueless about the real drama, which was just how I wanted it. By noon, I was dressed in a simple button-up and jeans, heading downstairs to meet Krista in the lobby. We'd arranged to visit the new offices that Roman's group was providing me. Equal partner resources, Roman insisted. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd soared from a hidden bungalow near the ocean to a top-floor suite, courtesy of the same man who once wrecked my marriage. As I reached the lobby, I spotted Krista in a corner chair, scrolling her phone anxiously. She wore a pale blue blouse, the color highlighting her eyes, and a knee-length skirt. Her hair was pinned up in a relaxed style that suggested both caution and a new sense of confidence. The moment she saw me, her lips curved in a tentative smile. "Hey," she said softly, standing. "Hey," I replied, my stomach tightening with an odd mix of guilt and warmth. We walked out to the sidewalk, where a black town car Roman's office had sent was waiting. Krista glanced at the driver, then at me, eyebrows lifting ironically. "Fancy," she murmured. I shrugged, feeling a pang of leftover bitterness. He insisted on making a good impression, I guess. Inside the car, we sat closer than we had in years, shoulders almost touching, the city passing by in a blur outside the tinted windows. There was a hush between us that felt loaded with everything we hadn't said. After a minute, Krista cleared her throat. "I'm so relieved you decided not to bury Roman entirely," she whispered, voice trembling. "Even though he deserved a reckoning. I know that was big for you, Liam." I studied her face, noticing the faint lines of worry that hadn't been there before. "It was big," I admitted. "I won't lie, part of me still itches for that final blow. But seeing you beg me to stop, and his apology, if you can call it that, something changed. Maybe I've changed." Her eyes shone. "You have changed. You're stronger. But you're still the man I once loved." My breath caught at her word choice. Once. "And what about now?" I asked softly. She reached across the small space, curling her fingers through mine. "Now, I want to re-earn your love." A wave of emotion nearly stole my voice. I managed a nod, pressing our hands together. This was the aftermath. The swirling confusion of relief, sorrow, and the faintest spark of hope. We arrived at an office building set in a sleek business district. Up on the 20th floor, a row of glass-walled spaces awaited me, each one freshly furnished. A team of new hires programmers and marketing folks had already been assembled by Roman's HR. The man himself wasn't present, presumably giving me room to breathe. A well-dressed project manager named Tasha greeted us, leading us around. The space was open concept, dotted with standing desks and VR demo stations. Huge windows overlooked the city. I couldn't help but imagine the difference from my cramped bungalow. My resentment flared momentarily. If Roman could do all this at the snap of his fingers, why had he stooped to seducing a married woman 2 years ago? But I pushed that thought down. Focus on rebuilding, I reminded myself. Tasha introduced me to the staff, who seemed both excited and a bit intimidated by my reputation as the mysterious VR genius. Meanwhile, Krista stood by my side, quietly supportive. Occasionally, she asked questions about potential interior design in the break lounge or how the layout might affect collaboration. She was in her element, offering tasteful suggestions. After the tour, Tasha retreated to let me settle. I found a corner desk labeled with my name. Krista leaned against the desk, arms folded, a small smile playing on her lips. "This is surreal," she noted, her gaze drifting around the room. "Not too long ago, you were living off the grid." I exhaled a nervous laugh. "Yeah, it's a lot, but maybe it can be a fresh start." She studied me quietly. "You're going to be in the public eye now, reporters, interviews. How do you feel? I shrugged, heart fluttering. I guess I can't hide forever. Part of me is scared. I paused, letting the truth seep in. Scared that all this success is built on a foundation of heartbreak, betrayal, and revenge. What if it crumbles? Her gaze softened. We can't rewrite the past, but we can decide how to move forward. If you let me, I want to stand beside you. A surge of gratitude and uncertainty blossomed in my chest. The conversation we'd had at dawn replayed in my mind. Apologies, tears, cautious promises. We're not magically fixed, I reminded myself, but maybe we were on the path. By late afternoon, we left the office, stepping onto the bustling sidewalk. As we strolled, Krista suggested grabbing an early dinner. We ended up at a quiet bistro with soft jazz playing. Over grilled fish and roasted vegetables, we talked about mundane things, her design clients, my potential press releases, Celeste's plan to fully pivot from any escort-related circles into legitimate business consulting. In the low-lit ambiance, Krista told me more about those hollow months after Roman discarded her.
I thought I'd ruin my life and yours, she whispered, tears pooling in her eyes. There were nights I couldn't sleep, replaying every moment of that party.
My chest ached. I had nights like that too, lying awake in that motel imagining you with him. A bitter edge laced my tone, but it was overshadowed by sadness now, not raw fury. Her hand slid across the small table, finding mine.
I can't erase my mistake, she said shakily, but I can spend the rest of my life being the wife you deserve.
A deep hush fell between us, thick with longing and regret. Slowly, I turned my palm to squeeze hers. Let's just take it one step at a time, I said. The betrayal cut deep, Krista. I can't pretend otherwise. But maybe we can start rebuilding trust if you're patient with me. She nodded, eyes glittering with tears. I'm not going anywhere. A faint hope sparked in my chest, the sensation both exhilarating and terrifying. We paid the check, stepping back into the city's swirl of lights. I walked her to her hotel, fingers entwined, ignoring the sideways glances from passers-by. For so long, we'd hidden from each other now. Ironically, we were free to be seen. At the entrance to her floor, we paused. She glanced down the hallway. "Want to come in?" she asked softly, her cheeks coloring. The desire in her eyes was clear, yet tempered by caution. My pulse jumped. 2 years of anger and distance hung between us, but also an undeniable magnetism. Slowly, I reached up to tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I do want that," I whispered, voice thick. "But let's not rush. I have scars I'm still working through." Her gaze flickered with understanding. "Of course. No rush," she murmured, leaning in to press a gentle kiss to my cheek. Then she slipped into her room, leaving me in the hushed corridor. I stood there for a moment, heart racing, the faint warmth of her lips lingering. This is the aftermath, I told myself once more, stepping back toward the elevator. I didn't know if we'd fully heal, but at least we were trying. The revenge arc had reached its climax, and now it was time to see if love could mend what remained. The next few weeks were a blur of public announcements and behind-the-scenes negotiations. Roman and I agreed on a carefully orchestrated PR approach, painting our partnership as a bold fusion of established might and innovative genius. I gave interviews that mostly skirted personal questions, focusing on the VR expansions. Though my nerves rattled each time a reporter asked, "So, tell us about yourself, where have you been hiding?" I managed to keep calm. During those interviews, a quiet tension simmered, the knowledge that beneath the polished statements, everything had once hinged on sabotage and heartbreak. Roman, for his part, performed the role of supportive ally, rarely missing a chance to praise my visionary coding. Our few face-to-face meetings stayed cordial, but I sensed unspoken gravity each time we locked eyes, a reminder of the unsteady truce we'd forged. Amid this professional whirlwind, Krista and I took tentative steps to rebuild what we'd once cherished. She finished some design projects and arranged to move temporarily to the city so we could find a place together. Part of me expected we'd jump back to living under the same roof instantly, but life wasn't that simple. Instead, we rented separate but nearby apartments in a modern complex. It gave us the freedom to test our closeness without suffocating each other. Some nights I cooked dinner at my place, and she'd come over with a bottle of wine. We'd chat about silly, everyday stuff, what color scheme might work in my new living room, or how her clients wanted Instagram-perfect interiors. Other nights, we parted with just a gentle kiss, each returning to our own lonely bed. One evening, after a particularly draining day of press calls and investor updates, I found myself at her door, carrying takeout from her favorite Thai place. My chest fluttered as she opened the door, hair damp from a shower, wearing a soft robe and an apologetic smile. "Sorry, you caught me mid-laundry," she said, stepping aside to let me in. I inhaled the comforting scent of her shampoo. "No worries, I brought dinner." "Enough for two," I added, lifting the bag. She brightened, leading me into her compact yet stylish living area. A couple of paint samples were taped to the wall, likely for some upcoming design pitch. As I laid out the food on a small dining table, I felt the weight of our complicated history pressing in. She must have felt it too. Her eyes carried a mix of warmth and trepidation. We ate quietly at first, the city lights twinkling through her balcony window. The spicy pad thai and sweet coconut milk warmed my senses. Eventually, she cleared her throat. "I was thinking about scheduling a couples therapy session," she said tentatively, voice catching. "Just once a week, maybe, to talk things through with a neutral party." My fork paused mid-air. A swirl of emotions rushed over me. Relief, apprehension, a little surge of embarrassment. "Therapy," I muttered, trying to keep my voice neutral. Her gaze flickered down. "I know it might feel strange, but we both have a lot of wounds. I want to do this right, and therapy might help us address stuff we can't talk about alone." I looked at her, heart aching. For so long I'd fantasized about humiliating her with my success, punishing her for the betrayal. Yet here I was, drawn to the honesty in her eyes. "All right," I said softly. "If you think it'll help, then sure. Let's try." Her smile trembled with gratitude. We cleaned up the dishes and ended up on her couch, the TV playing softly in the background, a crime show, ironically about revenge. She muted it after we realized how on the nose it felt. Tentatively, Krista inched closer, and I allowed it, my heart pounding. Her head rested on my shoulder, and for a moment, that old familiarity returned. The sound of her breathing, the warmth of her presence. My mind flashed back to nights in our old living room, curled up after a day's work when life seemed so normal. But we couldn't go back to normal, only forward. My stomach churned with the memory of her leaving with Roman, that humiliating ache. Instinctively, I stiffened. She must have felt it because she looked up, eyes flickering with apology. "We don't have to do anything more," she murmured. "I just want to hold you." I swallowed hard, nodding. "I'm sorry. The memories, they sneak up on me." She pressed a gentle kiss to my cheek, her breath warm against my skin. "We'll heal, one step at a time." The next day, we actually booked a couples therapy session with a recommended counselor named Marion. The office was cozy, full of plush chairs and neutral-toned walls, exactly the kind of environment that made me uneasy, as if prodding at raw wounds was about to happen. Marion, a calm woman with silver-streaked hair, welcomed us and asked us to share our story. Krista and I exchanged glances, uncertain how to begin. Then, in halting words, we recounted the heartbreak, the fateful Christmas party, Roman's role, my disappearance, her regret, and finally, our bizarre re-encounter through my VR empire. Marion's expression shifted from sympathy to mild astonishment, but she masked it well. "How do you feel right now, sitting side by side, telling this story?" Marion asked, glancing between us. My throat felt tight. "Scared," I admitted. "Scared it's all too damaged?" Krista squeezed my hand, her eyes brimming. "Hopeful," she whispered, "because he's here." Marion nodded thoughtfully. "Trust might be the biggest hurdle. Perhaps we focus on small building blocks, setting boundaries, honest communication about triggers like if certain memories resurface." I exhaled, tension leaving my shoulders. Over the next hour, we uncovered painful spots, my lingering rage, Krista's guilt and shame. Marion guided us gently, never pushing too far. By the session's end, I felt raw but also strangely lighter. Outside, the late afternoon sun shimmered on the city's glass buildings. Krista linked her arm with mine. "Thank you," she said quietly. I pressed a kiss to her temple. "We'll see if it helps." In the following weeks, therapy became a weekly fixture. We found ourselves discussing not just the betrayal, but old childhood wounds, insecurities, and the ways we'd drifted before Roman even showed up. More than once, I caught glimpses of the younger Krista I'd fallen in love with, curious, hopeful, eager to face life's challenges. Meanwhile, my VR launch soared under Roman's reluctant, respectful partnership. We gave each other space, rarely meeting outside official events. I still felt twinges of bitterness whenever we shared a stage, forced smiles for photographers. But to the public, we looked like an unstoppable duo. Mercer Tech's top exec and the visionary coder behind the next wave of VR. One night, after a particularly draining launch event, Krista and I found ourselves back at my apartment, half tipsy from champagne. The city lights glimmered through the windows. In the hush of the living room, we ended up making dinner out of leftover salad and cheese. We talked about how therapy was unearthing old habits, how we both needed to keep choosing each other day after day. Her hand settled on mine across the small kitchen table, eyes shining with a mixture of vulnerability and desire. "I still want you, Liam," she said softly. A flush of warmth spread through me. Slowly I stood, guiding her to her feet, our foreheads pressed together, hearts pounding. This time I let the moment unfold, wrapping my arms around her waist, feeling the softness of her body. Our kiss was tentative at first, two people rediscovering each other, but it deepened into something tender, laced with tears of relief. I couldn't claim we were fully healed. But in that moment, as she clutched my shirt and murmured my name, I realized that we were learning to navigate our broken pieces, forging them into something new. This was the reality of rebuilding our marriage, messy, emotional, uncertain. And somehow, that made each small victory taste even sweeter. A few months passed in a steady rhythm of therapy sessions, VR product milestones, and quiet evenings shared between my place and Krista's. Our relationship felt a bit like a dusty antique we were carefully restoring. Every new polish revealed more hidden scratches, but also more beauty underneath. During this time, Krista's design business took off. With Celeste officially stepping away from any escort work, they threw themselves into legitimate interior consulting. Serenity Interiors rebranded into a more polished firm, adding staff and booking bigger clients. They even secured a deal to design a boutique hotel's entire look. One afternoon, Krista showed me their updated portfolio. Digital mock-ups full of sleek living spaces, subdued color palettes, and strategic lighting. It impressed me how far she'd come from the shy design grad I once knew, lost in Roman's orbit. Now she carried herself with confidence and a certain humility that came from making mistakes and learning from them. In my VR offices, now bustling with almost 100 employees, I found myself brainstorming a collaboration with Krista and Celeste. My technology was evolving beyond gaming and corporate training. We aimed to develop immersive real estate previews, letting potential clients virtually walk through spaces before they were built. That's where Krista's design flair came in. If she could craft digital interiors, my VR would showcase them seamlessly. One late evening, we set up a meeting. Me, Krista, Celeste, and a few of my lead developers. The conference room glowed with overhead lights, half-empty coffee cups scattered about. Celeste wore a sharp black blazer, hair in a tidy bun. She'd become a legitimate business consultant for major clients, her charismatic presence a boon. "So," I began, leaning forward, "I'd love to integrate Serenity Interior's vision into a VR module. Clients could pick furniture styles, color schemes, even lighting conditions, then experience it firsthand in our sim. You design the 3D elements. We handle the coding." Krista's eyes lit up. That's exactly what Celeste and I have been dreaming of, an interactive design experience. People can see if that teal accent wall works in real time, or how a custom sofa would look under natural light. Celeste nodded. "We can brand it as a next-gen interior platform. Could be huge for corporate lobbies, hotels, upscale homes, and I bet even simpler clients would love a quick VR mock-up." My lead developer, Angie, chimed in. "Technically feasible. We just need stable 3D assets from your side. Then we'll adapt them to our VR environment with real-time shading, scaling, etc." The synergy was palpable, the mood in the room electric with possibility. I caught Celeste's subtle smile. This was the future she'd hinted at. Bridging talents, forging success without backstabbing or shady tactics. A small part of me felt an odd pang. If none of that heartbreak had happened, would we ever have come together like this? Before we wrapped, Celeste gave a gentle cough. Liam, Roman wants to hear about these expansions, you know. He might be open to partial funding. Are you comfortable with that? I tensed. Roman's name still made my gut twist, but I took a measured breath, remembering the shaky truce. If it helps the product, sure, as long as we maintain creative control. Roman's supposed to trust my direction, remember? She nodded with approval, glancing at Krista. You okay with that? Krista swallowed, a flicker of worry in her gaze. He and I don't exactly chat, but if he's truly letting Liam lead, then fine. She placed a hand on mine under the table, a quiet reassurance. That night, after everyone left, Krista lingered at my office. The city lights twinkled beyond the glass walls. She perched on the edge of my desk, crossing her legs. You did well in there, she said softly. Even after everything with Roman, you're handling it calmly. I sighed, rolling my shoulders. It's not easy, but each day I remind myself I chose this path, to be better, not bitter. I paused. And you're part of that reason. She leaned in, brushing a soft kiss on my cheek. The gentle intimacy nearly undid me. For so long we'd avoided each other, locked in guilt and anger. Now we were forging new trust, step by step. I appreciate you letting me be, she whispered, not forcing me to prove myself every second. It means more than you know. Our eyes locked. A tender hush settled. Slowly, I wrapped an arm around her waist, resting my forehead on her shoulder. Her warmth, her scent, it felt real, not overshadowed by old hurts. I want us to have a future, I said quietly, voice thick with emotion, not just a half-repaired past. Krista pressed her lips to my hair. Me too, she whispered, tears clinging to her voice. Let's build that future together. That promise took shape in the days that followed. We hammered out a formal partnership contract between my VR company and Serenity Interiors, calling it Immersive Design Solutions. The concept was simple. She and Celeste would handle creative design assets, my team would code the environment, and we'd market it as a premium VR design tool. Derek, my business liaison, was thrilled. He arranged mock-ups, potential client demos, and even scheduled an unveiling event. At times, my chest still tightened with pangs of old betrayal, like when I scrolled through old photos, stumbling upon a forgotten image of me and Krista at our second anniversary dinner. We'd looked so young, wide-eyed. Part of me grieved for that naive version of us, but each time Krista's gentle presence brought me back to the present, reminding me we'd earned our maturity the hard way. Celeste, for her part, thrived in this new, legitimate role. She networked with developers, teased us about adding more glamour to the VR rooms, and negotiated deals with a fierce wit. In quiet moments, she confided to me how freeing it felt not to hide behind Roman's shadow or any escort arrangement. I can finally be proud of my work, she admitted, eyes shining. One evening, after a smaller investor meet-and-greet for Immersive Design Solutions, Krista invited me to a small gathering at her new condo. She'd moved out of the separate apartment, taking a modest but stylish place closer to the design studio. Just a tiny housewarming, she insisted. A few co-workers, Celeste, you. I arrived with a potted succulent, my idea of a housewarming gift. The condo was bright, featuring tasteful mid-century accents, wide windows, and a plush rug that seemed to beckon you to sink your toes in. Celeste hovered around the open kitchen, pouring drinks for a handful of guests. Laughter filled the air, casual and comforting. At one point, Krista took me aside, guiding me to a small balcony overlooking a row of city lights. I want you to see something, she murmured, opening a slim journal. Inside were sketches, potential designs for an apartment we could share. My throat constricted. She'd drawn a layout with a cozy living room, a double office area for us, a corner for a VR setup, and a small reading nook. Her cheeks flushed. I know it might be early, but I'm daydreaming about us truly living together again. Not tomorrow, but when you're ready. When we both are. My eyes stung with emotion. Krista. I flipped through the pages, each one showing little notes like Liam's desk or wine shelf for date nights. The tenderness behind those scribbles nearly shattered the wall around my heart. "It's beautiful," I finally said, voice quivering. "We'll get there one day." She beamed, relief washing over her features. Then she leaned up, pressing a soft kiss on my lips. Surrounded by the city's glow and faint chatter from inside, we clung to each other, hearts beating in sync. In that moment, all the synergy of our new joint venture felt symbolic, like we were forging not just business deals, but a renewed bond. The betrayal still cast its shadow, but we were choosing to fill the present with kindness, mutual respect, and a dash of cautious hope. Weeks turned into months, a slow yet resolute march toward stability. Immersive Design Solutions launched in beta form, snagging its first wave of enthusiastic customers. I spent long days refining code, sometimes calling Krista at midnight to confirm a color palette or furniture dimension. We rarely fought, though tension surfaced when old insecurities flared, like my fear of her meeting Roman alone, or her worries that I'd revert to cold bitterness if business stress overwhelmed me. Therapy with Marion continued, though we scaled it back to bi-weekly sessions. One memorable session touched on the Christmas party betrayal. Marion coaxed me to describe every raw feeling from that night. Through trembling lips, I relived the humiliation, the swirl of heartbreak as Krista left, the rage I'd harbored. Krista wept openly, confessing how she'd felt trapped by Roman's charm, overshadowed by her own longing for validation. It was agonizing, but Marion helped us see each other's perspectives, sowing deeper empathy. Post-therapy, we usually decompressed over coffee. One chilly afternoon, we sat in a corner booth of a cozy cafe. Steam rose from our mugs. Krista fiddled with a napkin, her gaze distant. "It feels surreal," she murmured. "You're forging this big VR future, and I'm building design dreams with you. Yet I can't shake how we got here." I nodded, tracing a finger along the rim of my cup. "I know. Sometimes I wonder if we're living in an alternate reality, like the heartbreak belongs to a different version of us." She glanced at me, eyes brimming with tenderness. "Do you regret not destroying Roman?" I paused, considering the question that once kept me up at night. "A part of me wonders if I let him off easy," I admitted. "But I see him trying to be less predatory. And I see how you and I are healing. I realize total annihilation might have also annihilated us." Her lips curved in a sad smile. "Sometimes forgiveness does more for the forgiver than the forgiven. Maybe you ended that cycle of hurt." The word forgiveness felt heavy, but not impossible. My rage had cooled into a quiet acceptance that Roman existed in our orbit, occasionally crossing our path. We'd greet each other politely at business events, share polite small talk about new expansions, then part ways. An uneasy peace, but still a peace. One day, Celeste asked us to host a short conda for prospective designers and coders, touting our unique synergy. We stood on a small stage in a hotel conference room, speaking about how VR and interior design could fuse into one seamless experience. The audience ate it up, enthralled by our success story. If only they knew the dark undercurrents that once fueled it. At the end of the session, as the crowd dispersed, an older gentleman approached us. "Your partnership is inspiring," he said warmly. "You two are married, yes? Must be wonderful working so closely in business and life." A pang of memory flickered in me. Krista and I shared a glance, and she offered a gentle nod. "We are," she replied, voice soft. He beamed. "I can tell you have a deep understanding of each other's strengths." After he left, Krista and I exchanged a wistful look. We hadn't exactly re-announced our marriage to the world, but we also never formally divorced. Legally, we were still husband and wife. Emotionally, we were rebuilding that vow day by day. Her hand found mine backstage. "One step at a time," she whispered, echoing our new mantra. The real test of our renewed bond came when I decided to finally revisit our old house, the one we'd shared before I vanished. It had sat empty for a while, then was rented out to random tenants. Now it was vacant again. We both drove there on a weekend, hearts pounding at the sight of the familiar facade. Stepping inside, dust motes floated in the shafts of sunlight. The living room walls bore faint outlines where pictures once hung. The hallway creaked with each step, memories rushing in. I recalled how we danced here on lazy Sunday afternoons, how she teased me about my off-key singing. Then the final night, when I packed my gear and left, fury in my veins. At the threshold of our old bedroom, Krista's breath hitched. "I'm so sorry for how I ended it, Liam," she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I can't believe we let it break like that." I swallowed hard. "We can't undo it, but we can learn from it." She nodded, drifting to the window where our old bed once stood. The emptiness felt like a tomb for our past, yet in that stillness, a sense of closure blossomed. We were no longer trapped in the heartbreak of here. We'd outgrown it, forging a new life elsewhere. A gentle rain began tapping the roof, and we ended up sitting on the bare living room floor, backs against the wall. Krista leaned on my shoulder, tears drying. "Do you want to keep the house? Sell it? Start fresh?" I stared at the dim corners, imagining younger versions of us. "I think we should let it go," I admitted. "It belongs to who we were, not who we are now." Her fingers curled around mine, a gentle squeeze. "All right," she whispered. "Then we say goodbye." In that quiet moment, I closed my eyes, imagining all the anger, betrayal, and regrets drifting away like dust in a breeze. We'd come full circle, returning to the place it all fell apart, only to walk out hand in hand, forging something new. When we finally left, the rain had stopped, leaving the pavement slick. I locked the door, stepping into the damp air. Krista turned to me, expression a mix of sadness and resolve. "We'll find a new place that reflects us now. Maybe the one in my sketches, or something even better." A soft smile tugged at my lips. "Yes, we will." Over the next few days, we shared that decision with Celeste and a few close friends. We also discussed it with our therapist, Marion, who praised us for letting go of tangible reminders of old wounds. That sense of finality sparked more determination in both our careers. Krista and Celeste poured themselves into the immersive design expansions, while I hammered away at advanced VR modules. One evening, after a quiet dinner, Krista and I curled up on my couch, no tension, just the comfortable closeness of two people learning to trust again. The city glowed outside the window. She traced circles on my chest, voice soft in the hush. "Liam, do you think we'll ever fully heal from the betrayal?" I pressed my lips to her hair, breathing in her warmth. "I don't know if we'll ever forget, but we can keep choosing love over regret." She nestled closer. "I want to stand by you, forever if you'll let me. I know that sounds dramatic, but I'm done running." Emotion swelled in my chest. I kissed her forehead, letting a tear slip free, gratitude and lingering ache colliding. "I won't run either," I promised. "We'll face the future together." In that tender quiet, overshadowed by the hum of the city, we clung to the hard-earned promise that we could forge a new path, shaped by honesty, empathy, and the choice to rebuild rather than destroy. We might bear scars from the heartbreak that once consumed us, but scars also told a story of survival, and maybe that was enough to guide us forward. It happened so gradually that I barely realized how much time had passed since our public VR launch. The initial wave of success turned into a steady climb, and soon, deals with overseas partners began trickling in. I'd wake up to phone calls scheduled for odd hours, bridging time zones across Europe, Asia, and beyond. Before I knew it, we had a bustling division in Tokyo, another in Berlin, and talk of expansions in Dubai. One autumn morning, I found myself pacing my bright corner office, phone pressed to my ear. Outside, the city shimmered in crisp sunlight. On the other end of the line was a potential investor from South Korea, waxing enthusiastic about immersive architecture tours. I jotted quick notes on a pad: translation modules, local developers, market pilot. Next to me, a neat row of plane tickets for upcoming business trips lay pinned to a corkboard, destinations each a new frontier for the VR empire I'd built. When the call ended, I sank into my chair, staring at the pinned itinerary. A swirl of pride and nostalgia mingled in my chest. If my younger self, beaten down, humiliated, and alone, could see me now, forging international alliances, he wouldn't believe it. Even more surprising was how natural it felt, as if each step of heartbreak had forged my resilience. That afternoon, Krista and Celeste popped into my office for a quick check-in. "We're finalizing designs for that Paris project," Celeste announced, swirling a cup of tea. "They want a culturally sensitive adaptation of the VR environment. We might need your devs to incorporate some historical architecture scans." I nodded. "Sounds good. Angie's team can handle the 3D scanning integration. Just let them know the specs." Krista perched on the edge of my desk, flipping through a digital portfolio on her tablet. "Also, we might have an opportunity in Brazil, an upscale hotel chain that wants immersive design solutions for all their properties. They love the concept of letting guests virtually experience suites before booking." A jolt of excitement ran through me. "That's huge. Let's do it." Celeste grinned, shooting Krista a knowing look. "Told you he'd be on board." Watching them interact, my wife and the woman who once played a complicated role in our marriage reminded me how far we'd come. Celeste now thrived in the legitimate business realm, forging high-level contracts and forging relationships across continents. Krista, more confident than ever, talked color palettes and furniture modeling as if it was second nature. Not long after, I found myself on a flight to Tokyo with Krista by my side. The hush of the plane cabin late at night, the glow of overhead reading lights, it all felt surreal. She dozed with her head on my shoulder, her hair tickling my neck. In that private cocoon of ambient noise, I found myself reflecting on how drastically our lives had changed. We touched down at Haneda Airport in the early morning, met by a small, welcoming party from our local partners. The next week was a whirlwind of demos, press events, and late dinners in neon-lit Tokyo districts. Krista showcased her interior designs adapted for smaller Japanese apartments, and I pitched the flexible VR engine behind it all. We fielded endless questions from curious developers, forging new deals that would plant us firmly in Asia. On our third night, we stole a moment for ourselves, wandering the quiet back streets near Shibuya under softly glowing lanterns. Krista looped her arm through mine as we meandered past hidden shrines and bustling yakitori stalls. The city thrummed with life, yet we found small pockets of calm. "Hard to believe this is our reality now," she murmured, resting her head on my shoulder as we paused beside a tranquil koi pond. "Traveling the world, building VR expansions, and we're together." I brushed a thumb over her cheek, feeling the warmth of her skin. "Sometimes I still expect to wake up in that old bungalow," I said quietly, "where I was plotting revenge against Roman." She offered a faint, rueful smile. "We've come a long way." Then, in a softer tone, she added, "I'm proud of you, Liam." A flood of emotion washed through me, memories of heartbreak and bitterness dissolving into gratitude that we could share this adventure. Under the gentle glow of overhead lanterns, I leaned in, pressing a lingering kiss to her lips. The hush of the alley and the distant hum of the city felt almost cinematic, like we'd stepped into a slow-motion film, each tender moment underscored by the knowledge of how hard we'd fought to reach this peace. Over the next months, our expansions continued. We hopped between continents, showcasing everything from immersive historical tours in Rome to high-rise architecture previews in Dubai. Each new country tested us language barriers, cultural nuances, unexpected tech limitations. But with each hurdle, we found solutions, leaning on local experts and each other. Krista's design team blossomed under Celeste's strategic guidance. They hired bilingual staff, adapted color theory to local tastes, and built a repertoire of region-specific interior sets. Meanwhile, I hammered out VR updates with my global dev teams, ensuring everything ran smoothly on servers scattered across the globe. In the midst of that international hustle, Roman's presence hovered in the background. Occasionally, he'd appear at a press conference or major investor summit, giving a polite nod if we crossed paths. We rarely spoke beyond professional pleasantries. At times, I caught glimpses of him watching me, as if measuring how far I'd soared. Perhaps he sometimes regretted stirring up that fateful Christmas party. But in the calm acceptance that had grown between us, I sensed a man who'd grown more introspective, too. At one major unveiling in Singapore, Roman delivered a short speech about visionary collaborations. He praised Ocean Vista's VR breakthroughs and singled out my name, calling me a brilliant force who proved that innovation can come from anywhere. The crowd applauded, cameras flashing. My chest tightened at the memory of him once dismissing me as a nobody. Now, ironically, he called me brilliant in front of a global audience. When he stepped off stage, he caught my gaze. A silent nod passed between us, acknowledgement, not necessarily friendship. For me, that was enough. We both knew the dark past, but we were letting the future overshadow it. Later that night, Krista and I returned to our hotel suite, exhausted and giddy. The city skyline stretched out below, a carpet of shimmering lights. In the privacy of the room, she teased off her heels, rotating her ankles with a tired groan. "Tomorrow, no official events," she declared, falling onto the plush bed. "I want us to explore the city, maybe see those famous gardens." I chuckled, lying beside her, the day's stress melting away. Deal. She gazed at me in the dim lamplight. A flicker of mischief lit her eyes. With a gentle tug, she guided me closer until our bodies pressed. We kissed slowly, the weight of triumph and relief coursing between us. After so long tiptoeing around each other's insecurities, these moments of intimacy felt poignant, like each touch reaffirmed the bond we thought we'd lost. Her hands slipped under my shirt, fingers gliding along my back. My pulse quickened, a flush warming my skin. In a deliberate, careful way, we explored each other's bodies, mindful of the tender scars in our past. She whispered my name, her breath hot against my ear, and I murmured soft reassurances. Our kisses deepened, the world outside fading to a hush. We fade gently from the moment, maintaining respect for a broader audience. Later, we lay tangled in the sheets, hearts still pounding. She rested her head on my chest, content. I stroked her hair, feeling the steady rise and fall of her breath. A slow smile tugged at my lips, a far cry from the lonely nights of seething anger. I thought about everything we'd accomplished. Forging international ties, colliding a fusion of VR and design that dazzled clients from Paris to Tokyo. Meanwhile, we rebuilt our marriage, one therapy session, one honest conversation, one shared bed at a time. Krista must have sensed my thoughts.
"You okay?"
she asked softly. I kissed the top of her head, heartbeat thrumming with quiet joy. "Yeah," I whispered. "I'm better than I've ever been." Outside, the hush of the city underscored our intimate moment, and as I held her, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, the heartbreak was no longer the central note of our story. We had new chapters to write, ones shaped by understanding, empathy, and the shared goal of bringing beauty to the world in both VR and real life. At first, success tasted sweet and simple. With each international deal, our VR platform soared in profitability and cultural cachet. Major publications ran feature stories on how Liam Kay and Krista Price were revolutionizing design experiences worldwide. People marveled at the synergy. The scorned husband and the wife who once left him, now forging a formidable partnership. We never publicly detailed the entire fiasco, but rumor mills churned quietly. Eventually, an undercurrent of moral questions began to swirl around our expansions. It started small whispers from smaller developers in countries where we planned to open new offices. Some claimed we overshadowed local tech startups. Others worried about job displacement if VR replaced on-site designers. We shrugged off the concerns initially. It was the nature of innovation to disrupt, right? Then a more tangible conflict arose. In a developing nation, an ambitious entrepreneur wanted to buy our VR licensing but pay local coders a fraction of standard wages. I balked, pushing for fair compensation. The entrepreneur threatened to approach Roman's broader network for a cheaper deal. Roman himself, obligated by our partnership to chase profitable leads, suggested we at least explore the conversation. That's when old tensions flared. Krista noticed my unrest. Late one night in our new shared apartment, yes, we'd finally moved in together, I paced the living room, phone in hand, scowling at messages. Her gentle voice cut through my frustration. "What's wrong?" I raked a hand through my hair. "One of Roman's people insists we accept substandard labor practices to break into that market. I refuse to sacrifice ethics just for profit." Her eyes flashed concern. "That does go against everything we've tried to stand for." I sighed, shoulders slumping. "I've come too far, Krista. I spent years hating Roman for his ruthless approach. I can't become the same type of tyrant, crushing people for revenue." She walked over, resting her hands on my arms. Then stand your ground, she urged softly. Don't let him or anyone else steer you off course. The next day, I confronted Roman's liaison, a shrewd negotiator named Beck. We locked horns in a tense conference call. Beck argued that local labor markets often accept lower wages, so why fight it? I countered that acceptance isn't always fair or moral. We reached a stalemate. Later, Roman called me directly. His tone was calmer but laced with impatience. Liam, we can't save every corner of the world from corporate realities. Don't hamper our global push with idealistic demands. My anger spiked, memories of him dismissing me once upon a time. I'm not hampering anything. I'm trying to ensure we do business ethically. A silence hung on the line. Finally, he sighed. Fine. Let's figure out a middle ground, but you must realize the world won't bend to your virtues every time. I exhaled shakily, acknowledging that, for once, Roman was trying to compromise rather than bulldoze. We ended up drafting guidelines that mandated fair wages, building a PR statement about community engagement. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. That night, Krista and I toasted with relief, though an uneasy feeling lingered like the bigger we grew, the more moral gray areas we'd face. Another challenge emerged when certain critics argued our VR interiors were overshadowing real-world experiences, encouraging people to live in illusions. A popular blogger wrote a scathing piece. Ocean Vista fosters isolation. Why bother exploring real architecture if VR can do it for you? The piece went viral, stirring a debate about the ethics of advanced virtual immersion. On talk shows, experts sparred over whether we were pushing humanity deeper into digital cocoons. Krista took the criticism to heart. We designed this to enhance real life, not replace it, she complained one afternoon, scanning negative comments online. But some folks see VR as a threat, period. I squeezed her shoulder. We can't control every opinion. Maybe we do a campaign highlighting VR's role as a tool, not a substitute. She brightened. Yes. Show we're bridging technology and reality, not replacing it. Maybe host real-world design workshops side by side with VR demos. Encouraged by that plan, we launched an initiative called Design Meets Reality, inviting communities to interact with VR mock-ups, then step into completed physical spaces for a side-by-side comparison. We showcased how VR sped up the design process but never replaced actual craftsmanship. The efforts reduced some backlash, though pockets of skepticism remained. As if to underscore our moral dilemmas, an old friend from West Haven Shore, Bruce, the ponytailed electronics guy, contacted me, complaining that chain VR arcades had popped up, overshadowing small surf shops and local hangouts. They call it progress, Bruce lamented over a video chat. But it's just big business muscle. I hope you're not behind these expansions. My heart sank. Not directly, Bruce. Might be people licensing our tech. I had no idea they were targeting your town. He looked hurt. You can't control all your licensees, but maybe you can push them to respect local culture. I promised I'd try. The conversation ended with a pang of regret. The unstoppable tide of VR infiltration was both my pride and my cross to bear. One night, Krista and I returned from a draining day of meetings with a Middle Eastern investor. The moral complexities were piling up. Cultural constraints, questions about representation in VR simulations, wage issues. We flopped onto our couch, too exhausted for small talk. The city skyline glowed outside, silent witness to our internal tug-of-war. Eventually, Krista laid her head on my lap, voice a hush. Do you ever wonder if we should slow down? Focus on quality over global takeover? I let out a long breath, fingers brushing her hair. Yeah, sometimes. But momentum keeps pulling us forward. Investors demand growth, expansions. I can't shake the feeling we're losing a piece of ourselves. Her hand found mine. Let's not become slaves to the machine we built. We decide how it grows. Maybe we need philanthropic angles, giving back to the communities we enter. Her words sparked an idea. Philanthropy. Funding community programs to promote local arts and design. That might balance the scales. We decided then and there to create a philanthropic branch, funneling a percentage of our profits into supporting small communities impacted by VR arcades or overshadowed tech shops. Perhaps we'd sponsor local design schools or surf initiatives, bridging my old life with the new. That night, We emailed Celeste, proposing the idea. She replied instantly, praising us for a forward-thinking approach. Despite these steps, pressure still mounted from within. The late-night coding sessions, the constant push for updates to keep up with global demand, the swirl of new controversies. Some days, I felt like we'd built a beast that threatened to devour us. Krista felt it too, sometimes waking from fretful dreams about VR expansions overshadowing real experiences. We'd lie awake, hands clasped, reassuring each other that we'd find balance. Roman hovered, occasionally weighing in with pragmatic advice. Philanthropy is good PR, but watch your margins. I'd bite back a retort, forcing a polite nod. We coexisted in a delicate dance, him the seasoned mogul, me the once-scorned husband turned unstoppable entrepreneur. Sometimes I glimpsed a flicker of respect in his eyes, like he recognized we were forging a new path he'd never dared. The deeper we delved into our philanthropic push, the more I realized that success came with responsibility. The moral complexities were no longer hypothetical. Each new region or partnership required careful thought, negotiation, and compromise. But we refused to become another faceless corporation that steamrolled local communities. And through it all, Krista and I leaned on each other, tempering each crisis with the knowledge that we'd survived far worse heartbreak, betrayal, near ruin. Now, the conflict wasn't just personal. It was about shaping the global imprint of our VR dream. We found solace in late-night cups of tea, rereading our mission statements, and gently reminding each other that we started this to bring people closer, not drive them apart. In the hush of our apartment, lulled by city lights and the hum of technology, we carried the weight of our expanding empire. We might never reach moral perfection, but we vowed to keep our hearts open, learning from each stumble, believing that forging a kinder future was worth the fight. Time moved swiftly, marked by product launches, philanthropic projects, and a swirl of public appearances. Krista and I had crafted a delicate balance. She focused on design expansions, bridging local cultures, while I refined the VR core to handle surging user demand. Roman's involvement remained cordial yet distant, like a business ally whose dark history we'd chosen not to relitigate. I should have known the past had a way of sneaking back in. It happened at the Global Tech Summit in London, an annual event where the world's biggest names in innovation converged to showcase breakthroughs. Our company had a prime slot to demonstrate the next-generation VR suite complete with advanced haptics and multi-user collaboration. We flew in with a small team, including Celeste and a couple of senior developers. On the summit's opening night, we walked a glittering reception hall. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, and an excited chatter filled the space. Industry moguls rubbed elbows with starry-eyed startups, and reporters scrambled for exclusive scoops. Roman was there too, politely greeting acquaintances, though I noted a slight tension in his posture. He claimed to dislike such grand fanfare, but it was a necessary evil for networking. Krista and I made our rounds, exchanging pleasantries with old colleagues, beaming under the camera flashes. Over in a corner, a new VR competitor held a flashy demonstration, trying to stoke hype that they might dethrone us. I almost found it amusing how quickly the world turned from idolizing one project to the next big thing. We were about to slip away from the crowd when a hush rippled through the hall, like everyone collectively held their breath. Then a tall figure in a crisp suit appeared near the entrance, flanked by an entourage. At first, I didn't recognize him. He had graying temples, a more subdued expression. But as he scanned the room, my heart jolted. It was Charles Parker, the ex-CEO of Glenmore Innovations, the man who once employed me, whose Christmas party set the stage for my entire downward spiral. His gaze passed over the crowd, and for a moment it skimmed Krista and me. No sign of recognition. After all, he'd parted ways with Glenmore around the same time I vanished, but the shock hammered in my chest. Here was another ghost from my darkest chapter. I felt Krista's grip tighten on my arm, her eyes filled with alarm. She recognized him, too. We retreated to a quieter corner, trying to collect ourselves. "God," Krista breathed, voice trembling. "I never thought I'd see Charles again." My pulse raced. Charles had once orchestrated events that allowed Roman to dance freely at that Christmas party, effectively humiliating me before my coworkers. Sure, I'd never pinned the blame on Charles the same way I did Roman, but he symbolized a place, a time I wanted to leave behind. Now, ironically, I was a big name in VR, and he was just someone who'd lost track of my existence. I tried to shrug it off, focusing on a conversation with Celeste about tomorrow's keynote. But from the corner of my eye, I glimpsed Charles meandering through the reception, occasionally glancing our way. Tension coiled in my gut. Later that evening, after the reception wound down, Krista and I were walking out of the venue when Charles approached. He cleared his throat softly. "Excuse me, Liam, right? Liam Price?" I forced a polite smile, though my insides churned. Yes. His expression wavered, a mix of curiosity and faint regret. "I almost didn't recognize you. I heard rumors you built a groundbreaking VR system, and here you are. Unstoppable." A swirl of emotions cramped my chest. I managed a nod. Life can surprise us. He shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Krista. "Good evening." He greeted her with a polite dip of his head. She gave a tight smile in return. An uneasy hush stretched. Finally, Charles spoke, voice lowered. "I owe you both an apology, I think. Back then, I never stepped in when Roman took a liking to you, Krista, or when Liam seemed so distressed. I was too focused on my business ties. I should have done more." Those words stirred a painful recollection. Indeed, Charles had used Roman's name to brag about connections, letting Roman run wild at the party. Yet hearing him admit it brought a measure of closure. "We've all moved on," I said quietly, a tremor in my voice. He exhaled, nodding. "I know. I'm at a new tech firm now, ironically overshadowed by your VR hype. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for not acting responsibly at Glenmore. I hope you can forgive my ignorance." Krista looked him over, her voice soft. "Thank you, Charles. We appreciate you saying that." A faint relief flickered in his eyes. He extended a hand, uncertain. After a pause, I shook it, a symbolic gesture acknowledging the swirling regrets that once tied us all. Then he stepped away, disappearing into the retreating crowd. Krista exhaled shakily, turning to me. "That was unexpected." I nodded, my emotions tangled. "Feels like the entire cast from that party has reappeared in our lives. Roman, Charles. I wonder if Simon the old boss will show up next." Her lips curved in a weary grin. "Let's hope not. Enough ghosts for one lifetime." That night, back at our hotel suite, I stared at the city skyline from the window, replaying Charles's words in my head. The final thread tying me to Glenmore's humiliating memory had been cut by his apology. I wasn't sure if I felt vindicated or just exhausted. Krista approached from behind, slipping her arms around my waist. "You okay?" I leaned back into her warmth. "Yeah. Just thinking how strange it is to have so many closures in one period. Roman's truce, Charles's apology. It's like the universe is tying up loose ends." She pressed a soft kiss to my shoulder. "Maybe it's a sign we truly can move forward." A hush enveloped us, the city lights blinking below like distant stars. I realized, ironically, that the betrayal which once fueled me had become a thing of the past, replaced by new challenges, bigger responsibilities, and moral questions about our global imprint. Maybe it wasn't about punishing the old ghosts anymore, but forging a future that left heartbreak behind. Kissing Krista's temple, I murmured, "Let's get some rest. Tomorrow's the big VR keynote." She nodded, a tender smile lighting her face. We slipped into bed, the soft hum of air conditioning lulling us. As I drifted off, I felt the tension of old resentments unspooling, replaced by the calm that came from acknowledging the past and letting it stay there. Months later, I stood at a podium in a grand expo center, addressing a large crowd of tech enthusiasts, business leaders, and journalists. My VR company had grown far beyond my wildest imagination, and this conference was a chance to unveil our newest milestone, a truly collaborative VR environment that allowed multiple users worldwide to interact seamlessly with shared design spaces. The concept promised to unite architects in Dubai with interior decorators in Brazil and clients in New York, all in one fluid simulation. As I concluded the presentation, thunderous applause erupted. Cameras flashed. My chest swelled with cautious pride. "We made it," I thought, scanning the audience. I spotted Krista standing near the side, smiling with tears in her eyes. Celeste was beside her, clapping vigorously. Even Roman hovered at the back, arms folded, giving me a subtle nod. When the session ended, Krista bounded up onto the stage, throwing her arms around me. The crowd parted politely, some snapping photos of our embrace. I held her tight, remembering the countless nights we'd spent grappling with heartbreak, the therapy sessions that peeled back layers of hurt, the forging of a new marriage built on honesty and empathy. As the audience dispersed, a reporter ambushed us with a question. "Mr. Price, how does it feel achieving global success from such humble beginnings? Rumor has it your background involved some drama with your old employer?" A flicker of old pain surfaced, but I managed a gracious smile. Drama is part of life. It shapes who we become. I'm just grateful for the journey that led me here to a place where VR can connect the world. Krista squeezed my hand, reflecting my sentiment with a watery grin. The reporter nodded, satisfied, stepping away to chase another soundbite. I turned to see Roman approaching, a rare half-smile on his lips. "Quite the show," he remarked, voice subdued. "I never imagined this when I first saw you at that Christmas party." A swirl of memories flashed him dancing with Krista, my rage simmering in the corner, humiliations echoing in every whisper. It felt so distant now, overshadowed by new achievements. I offered a hand. Neither did I, to be honest. He took it, shaking firmly. There was no tension, just a quiet understanding that we'd moved on. "We did well, Liam," he said softly. "You and Krista, you overcame more than I thought possible. I'm glad." She nodded politely. We parted ways without further fuss, letting the crowd envelop us. It felt anticlimactic in a comforting way, no dramatics, just a final recognition that we'd grown beyond old grudges. Later, back in our newly purchased condo, a sunlit place with floor-to-ceiling windows that Krista had meticulously designed, we prepared a celebratory dinner. Celeste joined us, as did a couple of close friends from my dev team. Wine flowed, laughter filled the air, and the city skyline glowed outside. We'd planned a future expansion of our philanthropic arm, funneling resources to local communities, sponsoring design scholarships, supporting eco-friendly architecture. The excitement of impacting real lives beyond VR animated our conversations. Celeste teased that we might run for public office one day, but we all burst out laughing at the thought. Enough responsibility for now. Sometime after midnight, once guests departed, the apartment fell quiet. Krista and I curled up on the plush couch, barefoot, a soft jazz record playing in the background. She rested her head on my chest, exhaling a contented sigh. "Do you ever think about kids?" she asked softly. My heart fluttered. We'd danced around the topic in therapy, but never dived deep. "Sometimes," I confessed. "I wonder if I'd be a good father, given all my past anger." She laced her fingers through mine. "I think you'd be wonderful, protective, loving, determined. We don't have to rush, but I want that someday." A wave of emotion rose in me. The idea of forging an entirely new life, untainted by heartbreak, filled me with both excitement and trepidation. "Someday, yes," I echoed, kissing her temple. "We can create a family that knows the value of forgiveness and resilience." A gentle hush wrapped us, each lost in thoughts of what might be next. If someone had told me years ago that I'd stand here, free from the shackles of vengeance, building a future with the same woman who once shattered my heart, I'd have scoffed. But life had proven time and again that people could change, that love could survive betrayal if both parties truly fought for it. Eventually, I stood, pulling Krista up with me. We wandered to the wide balcony, the city's midnight lights sprawling beneath us like a living canvas. She leaned against the rail, hair catching the moonlight. I slid behind her, arms around her waist, chin on her shoulder. "How do you feel?" she whispered, voice carrying a delicate tremor. I inhaled the cool night air, letting the past and present merge in my mind. The betrayal of the wife receives a bitter end. The phrase circled in my thoughts, but it no longer stung. The bitterness had become a teacher, pushing us to unravel deeper truths about ourselves. We'd faced it, harnessed it for growth, and now, unbelievably, we stood side by side. "I feel hopeful," I admitted, my voice low. "Like we've finally put every ghost to rest. The heartbreak was real, but so is our second chance."
A tear slipped down her cheek, though she smiled. "I love you," she murmured, the words gentle yet brimming with depth. My chest tightened. I pressed a soft kiss to her neck, feeling her pulse quicken. "I love you," I echoed, and it felt neither forced nor overshadowed by old resentments. It felt honest, earned. Hand in hand, we gazed at the neon horizon, letting the slow breeze remind us of how far we'd traveled literally and metaphorically. The pain of betrayal once threatened to consume us both, but forging a new bond after destruction had made our love sharper, stronger. We were no longer naive. We understood the cost of mistakes, the power of forgiveness, and the messy, beautiful complexity of choosing each other again. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed, the city forging onward in its relentless rhythm. Leaning into Krista's warmth, I closed my eyes, imagining a day when we might share these lessons with a future child, teaching them that heartbreak doesn't have to define you, that revenge isn't always the answer, and that love can triumph if you dare to fight for it. In that quiet, moonlit moment, it felt as though our story had come full circle. We'd walked through the fire of betrayal and revenge, emerged scarred but alive, and now stood at the threshold of a new chapter, one shaped by hope, empathy, and the gentle promise of tomorrow.